The helicopter blades cut through Manhattan's skyline like a predator's claws, carrying Maximilian Steele toward the most dangerous acquisition of his career. Below, Chrome Industries' headquarters gleamed like prey waiting to be devoured. His enhanced hearing caught every word of the panicked board meeting 40 floors down, including the sharp, defiant voice of a woman who dared to call his offer corporate terrorism. Max's wolf stirred beneath his Armani suit, recognizing something primal in that voice. Something that made his billion-dollar empire feel suddenly fragile. In a world of power and predators, money can buy everything, except the one woman written in his blood. Chapter 1. The Chrome Industries boardroom fell silent as Maximilian Steele entered, his presence commanding the space like an apex predator claiming new hunting grounds. The 42nd floor conference room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, had witnessed countless corporate battles, but none quite like this. Max's wolf senses cataloged every detail: the nervous sweat of Chrome's board members, the ozone scent of an approaching storm, and beneath it all, something that made his pulse quicken: wild jasmine and steel, a scent that spoke to the most primitive part of his brain. Gentlemen, Max's voice carried the controlled power that had built Steel Dynamics into a $20 billion empire. His steel-gray eyes swept the room, noting each micro-expression, each tell that revealed Chrome's weaknesses. And lady, his gaze landed on the woman at the far end of the table, and every instinct he'd honed over 34 years, both as a ruthless CEO and as an alpha werewolf, screamed danger. Dr. Aria Sterling, Chrome Industries' Chief Technology Officer, met his stare, without flinching. Auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun revealed the elegant line of her neck, while emerald eyes held an intelligence that matched his own. She wore a charcoal suit that couldn't quite hide the lean strength of her frame, and when she spoke, her voice carried an edge that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. "Mr. Steele," she said, her tone precisely polite and completely unintimidated. "Before we begin, I have one question about your acquisition proposal." Max raised an eyebrow. Chrome's CEO, David Chen, shot her a warning look that she ignored completely. "Interesting. Please. Your hostile takeover values Chrome at $12 billion, but our quantum computing patents alone are worth $15 billion in the current market." She leaned forward slightly, and Max caught another hit of that intoxicating scent. "So either your analysts are incompetent, or you're attempting to steal proprietary technology that could revolutionize global communications." The boardroom's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Max felt his control, carefully maintained for over a decade, begin to fray.
No one spoke to him like that.
No one challenged him so directly, especially not in front of witnesses. His wolf wanted to bare its teeth. The billionaire wanted to crush her. The man wanted to know what she'd taste like. "Dr. Sterling," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a caress disguised as a threat. "I appreciate directness in business. It saves time." He moved closer to the table, noting how she didn't retreat even as his supernatural dominance filled the room. Most humans couldn't handle being in close proximity to an alpha werewolf, but she sat perfectly still, watching him with those remarkable green eyes. "You're right about the patents," he continued, allowing a slight smile to curve his lips. "They're worth considerably more than $15 billion to the right buyer, which is precisely why Chrome Industries needs protection." "Protection from whom?" Aria's voice carried skepticism that bordered on mockery. Max's enhanced hearing caught the whispered conversation in the hallway outside. Two Chrome executives discussing backdoor negotiations with Titanium Corp, Chrome's primary rival. His wolf snarled silently. Treachery always triggered his more primitive instincts. From corporate predators who would steal your innovations and destroy your company from within, he said, his gaze never leaving hers. Some threats, Dr. Sterling, come from unexpected directions. As if summoned by his words, the conference room door burst open. James Morrison, Chrome's head of security, entered with barely controlled panic. "Mr. Chun, we have a situation. Someone's been feeding our R&D schedules to Titanium Corporation. The quantum computing project." "That's enough." Chun cut him off, his face flushing red. "But the damage was done. Max watched Aria's expression shift from defiance to shock to a fury that made his wolf sit up and take notice. When she turned those green eyes back to him, they blazed with an intensity that sent heat straight to his core. "You knew," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "You knew about the leak before you made your offer." "I know many things, Dr. Sterling." Max straightened his platinum cufflinks, a gesture that had intimidated Fortune 500 CEOs across 3 continents, including the fact that Titanium Corp has scheduled a hostile takeover of Chrome for next Tuesday. "My offer, generous as it is, expires Monday at midnight." The room erupted in panicked voices, but Max heard only Aria's sharp intake of breath. He also caught something else, a change in her scent that spoke of adrenaline and determination.
She was planning something.
Chun was already capitulating, his voice shaky as he addressed the board. "Given these circumstances, perhaps we should seriously consider Mr. Steele's proposal."
No.
Aria stood, and Max was surprised by how tall she was, 5'8" at least, with a presence that commanded attention. "There's a third option." Max felt his wolf stir with genuine interest. In his experience, brilliant women were either allies or enemies. There was rarely middle ground. "I'm listening." "Chrome Industries doesn't need to be saved," she said, moving around the table with fluid grace. "It needs to evolve. Mr. Steele, you want our quantum computing technology. What if I told you there's something better?" She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a sleek device no larger than a smartphone. When she activated it, the lights in the room dimmed, and every electronic device, phones, laptops, even the building's climate control, began responding to her commands. "Quantum neural interfacing," she said, her voice carrying a pride that made Max's chest tighten unexpectedly. "Not just quantum computing, but direct human technology integration. The ability to control complex systems through thought alone." Max's wolf went completely still. As an alpha werewolf, he knew the value of evolutionary advantages. What she was describing could change the balance of power between the supernatural and human worlds forever. "Impossible," he said, but his enhanced senses told him she was telling the truth. "No elevated heart rate, no scent of deception. I've been testing it for 6 months." Aria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Chrome Industries isn't just a technology company, Mr. Steele. We're the future. And the future isn't for sale." Before Max could respond, his phone buzzed with an encrypted message from his pack's second-in-command. "Alpha, we have a problem. Rogue werewolves spotted near Chrome Industries. They're not here for the technology." Max's blood ran cold. If rogue werewolves were targeting Aria, it meant someone else knew about her innovations, someone from his world who understood their implications. He looked up to find her watching him with those penetrating green eyes, and realized with crystalline clarity that his carefully ordered existence was about to become very complicated. "Dr. Sterling," he said, his voice carrying an authority that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. "I believe we need to discuss this privately." "I don't think so," she replied, but her scent shifted again, uncertainty mixed with that maddening jasmine and steel. Max's phone buzzed again. This time the message was from his head of security. "Building perimeter breached. Hostiles moving toward executive floors. Recommend immediate extraction." The predator in him recognized a hunt beginning. The alpha in him knew his mate was in danger. The billionaire in him realized he was about to make the most important acquisition of his life. And it had nothing to do with Chrome Industries. "Dr. Sterling," he said, moving toward her with the fluid grace of his wolf form. "I'm afraid this meeting is about to be interrupted by circumstances beyond our control." The lights went out. Chapter 2. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the boardroom as Max's enhanced vision adjusted instantly to the darkness. Around the table, Chrome's board members fumbled for their phones, their human eyes struggling in the dim red glow. But Max's attention was entirely focused on Aria, whose scent now carried the sharp edge of adrenaline mixed with something else, determination. She hadn't moved from her position beside the window, and in the emergency lighting, her green eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire that made his wolf pace restlessly. "Mr. Chun," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Please escort the board to the secure conference room on the 38th floor. Use the stairwells. But the elevators, Chen started, are compromised, Max finished, his supernatural hearing picking up the mechanical grinding of elevator cables being cut 40 floors below. He moved closer to Aria, noting how she tracked his movement with the awareness of someone accustomed to danger. Interesting. Dr. Sterling, we need to leave.
Now.
She turned those remarkable eyes on him, and he caught something in her scent that made his wolf go completely still. Recognition. Not of him personally, but of what he was. You're not entirely human, she said quietly, her voice pitched for his ears alone while chaos erupted around them. Enhanced reflexes, superior hearing, and you knew about the security breach before any alarm sounded. Max felt his carefully maintained control slip another notch. In 10 years of hiding his supernatural nature while building his empire, no human had ever identified him so quickly. That's quite an accusation, Dr. Sterling. It's not an accusation. She moved closer, and the scent of wild jasmine and steel intensified until his wolf was practically howling for attention. It's professional curiosity. My quantum neural interface technology doesn't just read human thoughts, it detects neurological patterns that deviate from baseline humanity. Before he could process the implications of her words, the boardroom's reinforced windows exploded inward in a shower of safety glass. 3 figures dressed in black tactical gear swung through the opening on rappelling lines, moving with inhuman speed and grace. Max's nostrils flared, catching their scent immediately. Werewolves. Rogues, by the wild, uncontrolled smell of them. And they weren't here for Chrome Industries technology. They were here for Aria. The first attacker landed in a crouch, yellow eyes scanning the room before locking onto their target. When he smiled, elongated canines glinted in the emergency lighting. Dr. Aria Sterling, the lead rogue said, his voice carrying the guttural edge of a wolf barely contained in human form. You're coming with us. Max stepped between them, his own dominance flooding the room like a physical force. The attacking wolves immediately stiffened, recognizing the presence of an alpha even as their human minds struggled to understand what they were sensing. You're trespassing, Max said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the humans in the room unconsciously back away. And you're threatening someone under my protection. The lead rogue's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Alpha Steele. We didn't know you were involved. Now you do. Max let his wolf rise closer to the surface, not enough to shift but sufficient to project the kind of supernatural menace that had made him the most feared alpha on the East Coast. Leave. Can't do that. The rogue's stance shifted, preparing for combat. Our employer wants the woman. Alive, but that's the only specification. Max felt his control snap. He moved with inhuman speed, crossing the distance between them in a single bound. His hand closed around the rogue's throat before the other wolf could react, lifting him off the ground with strength that no human should possess. Wrong answer, Max growled, his voice dropping into the range that made even other alphas nervous. Behind him, he heard Aria's sharp intake of breath, but to her credit, she didn't scream. Instead, she did something that surprised him. She moved. While Max dealt with the lead attacker, the second rogue had circled around the conference table, heading directly for her. Aria grabbed the quantum neural device from the table and pressed it against her temple. Immediately, every piece of electronic equipment in the building responded to her command. The emergency lighting blazed to full brightness, temporarily blinding the attackers. The building's sprinkler system activated, but only on the 42nd floor. Most impressively, the executive elevator, supposedly offline, arrived at their floor with a soft ding. That's not possible, the third rogue snarled, his eyes beginning to glow with the yellow light of an impending shift. You'd be surprised what's possible, Aria replied, her voice carrying a confidence that made Max's wolf rumble with approval, when you can interface directly with quantum processing networks. Max released the first attacker, letting him collapse to the water-soaked carpet. His enhanced senses told him more rogues were moving up the stairwells, at least 6, maybe more. Whatever was happening here went far beyond a simple corporate acquisition. Dr. Sterling, he said, extending his hand toward her. "Trust me." For a moment that felt like an eternity, she studied his face. Water from the sprinklers had darkened her auburn hair, and droplets clung to her eyelashes, but those green eyes remained steady and analytical. Then she placed her hand in his, and the moment their skin touched, Max's world exploded into sensation. Heat raced up his arm, and his wolf howled with recognition so powerful it nearly drove him to his knees.
Mate.
The word echoed through every cell in his body, carrying implications that threatened to shatter his carefully ordered existence. But there was no time to process the revelation. The rogues were recovering, more were coming, and the woman whose touch had just rewrote his DNA was in mortal danger. "The elevator," he said, his voice rougher than intended. They moved together, Aria's hand still in his as she used her other to maintain contact with the neural interface device. The elevator doors opened to reveal Max's head of security, Marcus Webb, a werewolf from his own pack whose loyalty was absolute. "Alpha," Marcus said, his eyes taking in the scene with professional assessment. "Extraction team is en route to the roof. We have maybe 3 minutes before this building is crawling with hostiles." "Who sent them?" Max demanded as they stepped into the elevator. "Still working on that," Marcus replied. "But whoever it is knows about both your business interests and your supernatural nature. This isn't coincidence." As the elevator climbed toward the roof, Max became acutely aware of Aria's proximity. The confined space intensified her scent until his wolf was practically drunk on it. More concerning, he could feel her studying him with that analytical intelligence, putting pieces together at a rate that should have been impossible for someone who just learned that werewolves existed. "The quantum neural interface," she said suddenly. "It's not just reading my thoughts. It's amplifying them. I can sense more than I should be able to." Max's blood ran cold. If her technology could enhance human cognitive abilities to supernatural levels, it explained why the rogues wanted her. It also explained why his mate bond was so intense. She wasn't entirely human anymore. The elevator reached the roof, and through the opening doors, Max could see his private helicopter waiting, rotors already spinning. But between them and safety stood 2 more rogues, their eyes glowing yellow in the darkness. "Dr. Sterling," Max said, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha giving orders to his pack. "When I move, you run for the helicopter. Don't look back." "I'm not leaving you two," she started. "You are," he interrupted, and the command in his voice made her step back instinctively. Then his expression softened slightly. "Trust me. I'll be right behind you." What he didn't tell her was that the mate bond had just made her the most important thing in his universe. He would tear apart every rogue werewolf on the continent before he let them take her. Max stepped onto the roof, letting his wolf finally surface. His human form began to blur at the edges, not fully shifting but becoming something more than human, something that made the rogues bare their teeth in recognition of a superior predator. "Last chance," he growled. "Walk away." The rogues chose to fight. It was over in seconds. When Aria reached the helicopter, she turned back to see Max following, his expensive suit torn but otherwise unharmed. The rogues lay unconscious on the roof, and there was something in his eyes that made her quantum-enhanced mind race with impossible possibilities. As they lifted off into the Manhattan night, she realized that her quiet life as a technology researcher had just become infinitely more complicated. And the man sitting across from her, the billionaire alpha werewolf who'd just saved her life, was watching her with an intensity that suggested her complications were only beginning. Chapter 3. The helicopter's descent toward Max's private estate in the Hamptons gave Aria her first glimpse of the empire she'd inadvertently become part of. Through the aircraft's windows, she could see a sprawling compound that looked more like a fortress than a billionaire's retreat, high walls, discreet security towers, and grounds that stretched for miles along the pristine coastline. But it was the people waiting on the landing pad that made her enhanced senses spike with alarm. Even from 100 feet up, she could tell they weren't entirely human. The same subtle differences she detected in Max, 2 fluid movements, heightened awareness, and almost predatory stillness, marked every figure below. "Welcome to Lunar Point," Max said, his voice cutting through the helicopter's noise. "It's secure." Aria turned to study his profile as he gazed down at his estate. In the aircraft's dim lighting, his features seemed sharper, more defined than they had in Chrome's boardroom. The expensive suit couldn't quite hide the lean muscle beneath, and there was something about the way he held himself, alert, dominant, dangerous, that made her quantum-enhanced mind catalog him as a threat even as her body responded to his proximity with unwelcome heat. "Secure from what?" she asked. His steel-gray eyes met hers, and she caught a flash of something primal in their depths. "From people who want to use your technology to start a war between worlds you didn't know existed until tonight." The helicopter touched down with barely a vibration, testament to the pilot's skill. As the rotors wound down, the figures on the landing pad approached with military precision. Aria counted 12 individuals, all moving with that same inhuman grace. "Your pack," she said, and it wasn't a question. Max's surprise was carefully controlled, but she caught it anyway. "You're adapting remarkably quickly to information that should be impossible for a human to process. I told you, the quantum neural interface enhances cognitive processing." She touched the device still connected to her temple. "I'm not just thinking faster. I'm thinking differently. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, situational awareness, it's all amplified." "That's what I was afraid of." Before she could ask what he meant, the helicopter door slid open and a woman with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes like polished amber stepped forward. She was perhaps 50, but carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Alpha," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Aria's enhanced hearing identified as Eastern European. "The perimeter is secure, but we've detected at least 3 more incursion attempts since you left Manhattan. Someone is very eager to acquire Dr. Sterling." "Status report, Elena," Max said, stepping down from the aircraft and extending his hand to help Aria disembark. The moment their fingers touched again, that electric sensation raced up her arm, accompanied by something new, a sense of connection that felt almost like wireless data transfer, but infinitely more intimate. Her quantum-enhanced mind tried to analyze the phenomenon and came up with results that should have been impossible. Synchronized neural patterns. Shared brainwave frequencies. As if their minds were trying to link at a quantum level. "Dr. Sterling," Elena said, studying her with unsettling intensity. "I'm Elena Vasquez, head of security for Steel Dynamics. We need to discuss your unique situation." They moved toward a sleek building that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine rather than on a Werewolf Pack's compound. Inside, floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of the ocean, while discreet security monitors displayed feeds from dozens of cameras positioned throughout the estate. "Unique how?" Aria asked, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than her annual salary. Elena exchanged a look with Max that carried volumes of unspoken communication. "In our world, Dr. Sterling, there are laws. Ancient laws that govern interactions between supernatural species and humans. Your technology complicates things." "My technology helps people interface with quantum computing systems," Aria said, her voice carrying an edge of defensiveness. "It's medical research with commercial applications." "Show her," Max said quietly. Elena activated a wall-mounted screen, and suddenly Aria was looking at security footage from Chrome Industries, but not from tonight's attack. This was from 3 weeks ago, showing her in her private laboratory, working alone on the quantum neural interface prototype. In the footage, she watched herself place the device against her temple and close her eyes in concentration. What happened next made her blood run cold. On screen, every piece of electronic equipment in the lab began operating simultaneously. Computers that weren't connected to networks started displaying complex calculations. Experimental processors began running programs that didn't exist. Most impossible of all, the lab's quantum computer, a machine that required liquid nitrogen cooling and perfect isolation, started processing data at levels that should have required an entire server farm. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was watching herself, on video, begin to glow with a soft, blue-white light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "That's not possible," Aria whispered, but even as she said it, her enhanced memory was providing perfect recall of that night. She remembered the sensation of connectivity, of being part of something vast and powerful. She'd assumed it was just the neural interface working properly. "Dr. Sterling," Max said, his voice gentler than she'd heard it before. "Has anyone ever told you that you were adopted?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything," Elena said, her amber eyes reflecting genuine sympathy. "Because what you're seeing in that video isn't human technology enhancing human capabilities. It's supernatural abilities being awakened by human technology." The room seemed to spin around Aria as implications crashed through her quantum-enhanced consciousness. "You're saying I'm what?" "Part werewolf." "Not werewolf," Max said, and something in his voice made her look at him sharply. "Something else. Something we thought was extinct." Before anyone could elaborate, alarms began blaring throughout the compound. Elena's expression shifted to cold professionalism as she checked her communication device. "Alpha, we have multiple breaches. North, south, and east perimeters simultaneously. Professional teams with military-grade equipment." She paused, her face grim. "And they're broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Return the Techno-Witch and no one dies." Max's face went completely still, but Aria caught the scent of something that made her newly awakened senses recoil. Fury so intense it carried the metallic tang of violence. "Techno-Witch," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Someone knows exactly what you are, Dr. Sterling, and they're willing to start a war to get you." Through the windows, Aria could see shapes moving in the darkness. Too many shapes, all converging on the main house with military precision. Her quantum neural interface was picking up electronic signatures from sophisticated surveillance equipment, weapon systems, and communication networks. Whoever was out there, they weren't rogues. They were professionals. "Max," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "How many people are in your pack?" 43, he replied, already moving toward what she assumed was a weapons cabinet. "And how many are coming for us?" Elena checked her tactical display. "Conservative estimate? 200. Aria touched the quantum neural device at her temple, feeling its connection to every piece of technology within a 50-mile radius. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying, like being plugged into the nervous system of the modern world. "Then we're going to need an advantage they're not expecting," she said, her voice carrying a confidence that surprised even her. Max turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch, not just desire or protectiveness, but recognition. As if he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Aria smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like she was back in control. "I'm going to show you what a Techno-Witch can do when she stops holding back." Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the night air, and the battle for Aria's future was about to begin. Chapter 4. The main house of Lunar Point transformed into a war room within minutes. Max's pack moved with practiced efficiency, securing windows, establishing defensive positions, and checking weapons that Aria suspected weren't entirely conventional. But her attention was focused on the wall of monitors Elena had activated, showing tactical displays that made her enhanced mind race with possibilities. 200 hostiles, all human, Elena reported, her fingers flying over a keyboard that interfaced directly with the estate's security network. Military training, expensive equipment. Someone funded this operation very well. Max studied the displays with the focused intensity of a predator analyzing prey. Recognition patterns? Still processing, but the deployment formation suggests private military contractors. Tier 1 operators. Elena's expression darkened. "Alpha, this isn't random. Someone with serious resources wants Dr. Sterling, and they don't care about collateral damage." Aria pressed deeper into her connection with the quantum neural interface, feeling her consciousness expand across the estate's electronic infrastructure. Through security cameras, she watched teams of black-clad figures establishing perimeters, their movements coordinated with military precision. But there was something else, electromagnetic signatures that didn't match standard tactical equipment. "They have supernatural containment devices," she said, her enhanced senses picking up energy patterns that made her skin crawl. "Some kind of technological restraint system designed specifically for non-human entities." Max's head snapped toward her. You can sense that? I can sense everything electronic within a 20-mile radius, Aria replied, then paused as more information flooded through her connection. Max, they're not just here to capture me. They have devices specifically calibrated for werewolf physiology. Ultrasonic suppressors, electromagnetic field generators that interfere with shape-shifting, and something else. She touched her temple, focusing harder on the strange energy signatures. What she found made her blood run cold. They have a supernatural consultant, she whispered. Someone who helped them design this operation. Someone who knows exactly what you are and exactly what I'm becoming. Before Max could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed only a number, but when he answered, the voice that filled the room's speakers was cultured, confident, and utterly cold. Alpha Steele. I trust you're enjoying the evening's entertainment. Max's eyes flashed with barely controlled rage. Who is this? Someone who's been watching your little technology acquisition with great interest. Dr. Sterling's abilities represent a paradigm shift in the balance of power between our worlds. Surely you understand the implications. Aria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The voice was human, but there was something underneath it, an authority that spoke of knowledge and resources that spanned both supernatural and corporate realms. What do you want? Max asked.
Simple.
Dr. Sterling comes with us voluntarily, and your pack lives to see tomorrow. Refuse, and we'll demonstrate exactly what 200 trained soldiers can do to 43 werewolves, regardless of your supernatural advantages. Through her connection to the security system, Aria watched the attacking teams move into final positions. They weren't just surrounding the compound, they were creating a containment grid designed to prevent any supernatural entity from escaping. You have 5 minutes to decide, the voice continued. After that, we begin with non-lethal suppression. Dr. Sterling will be just as useful unconscious. The line went dead. Elena immediately began issuing orders through her communication system, coordinating defensive positions and escape routes. But Aria could see the tactical reality through dozens of camera angles. They were completely surrounded by professionals who'd prepared specifically for this confrontation. Max, she said quietly, they're going to win. He turned to face her, and the raw intensity in his steel-gray eyes made her breath catch. Not if I have anything to say about it. You're an alpha werewolf with 42 pack members against 200 special forces operators with supernatural containment equipment, Aria said, her quantum-enhanced mind calculating probabilities with mathematical precision. The odds are irrelevant, Max interrupted, moving close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You're my mate, Aria. That means I'd fight the entire world to keep you safe. The words hit her like a physical force, accompanied by a surge of connection through the neural interface that felt like plugging into a power grid. Suddenly, she could sense not just Max's emotional state, but his supernatural nature, the wolf that lived beneath his human exterior, ancient and powerful and completely devoted to her protection. Mate, she repeated, her enhanced cognitive abilities finally processing what that meant in supernatural terms. The neural interface, it's not just enhancing my natural abilities. It's awakening something that was already there. Elena was right, Max said, his voice carrying a mixture of wonder and concern. You're not human, Aria. You're something we thought was extinct, a bridge between the technological and supernatural worlds. Through the estate's communication system, Elena's voice cut through their conversation. Alpha, perimeter teams report movement. They're beginning their approach. Aria looked at the tactical displays, watching 200 trained killers converge on the people who'd risked everything to protect her. Her quantum-enhanced mind showed her exactly how the battle would unfold: courage and supernatural strength against overwhelming numbers, and advanced preparation. The pack would lose. Max would die trying to save her, and she would end up in the hands of whoever was orchestrating this operation. Unless she stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like what she apparently was, a techno-witch. Elena, she said, her voice carrying a new authority that made everyone in the room look at her. I need complete access to your communication systems, security networks, and any electronic devices within a 50-mile radius. Dr. Sterling, I don't think. Elena began. Do it, Max said, his alpha command cutting through any objections. Aria pressed both hands against the quantum neural interface, feeling her consciousness explode outward across the electromagnetic spectrum. Suddenly, she was connected to everything: security cameras, communication networks, GPS systems, vehicle computers, weapon targeting systems, even the smartphones carried by the attacking soldiers. What she found made her smile, with predatory satisfaction. Max, she said, her voice echoing strangely as part of her awareness remained connected to the technological grid. How would you like to see 200 Special Forces operators suddenly become very confused about their mission parameters? Through her connection to their communication networks, she began rewriting tactical data, scrambling GPS coordinates, and feeding false information to team leaders. But that was just the beginning. Vehicle engines began shutting down. Weapon systems started displaying error messages. Night vision equipment began showing false heat signatures that placed the defenders in completely wrong locations. Most importantly, she found the electromagnetic suppression devices designed to contain supernatural entities and began systematically overloading their power systems. What are you doing? Elena asked, watching her tactical displays light up with confused chatter from the attacking teams. Evening the odds, Aria replied, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like herself again, brilliant, capable, and absolutely furious at being hunted like prey. Through the estate's external cameras, she watched as carefully coordinated assault teams began stumbling through the darkness, their advanced equipment failing in cascading patterns of technological rebellion. But her enhanced hearing also caught something else: the sound of helicopters approaching from the ocean, carrying reinforcements that her electronic interference couldn't touch. Max, she said, her quantum-enhanced awareness detecting the new threat. We've bought ourselves time, but more are coming. A lot more. He moved to the window, his supernatural senses confirming what her technology had revealed. How many? 50 additional hostiles, plus aerial support. Aria felt her connection to the neural interface deepen, revealing possibilities that should have been impossible. But I have an idea. It's dangerous, and it will change everything between us. Max turned back to her, and in his eyes she saw complete trust, mixed with something deeper, a connection that transcended logic or caution. Tell me, he said. Aria took a breath, knowing that what she was about to suggest would either save them all or destroy any chance of a normal life she might have had.
The mate bond, she said.
It's not just emotional, is it? It's a quantum entanglement at the neurological level. If I can interface with your supernatural abilities the same way I interface with technology. Understanding dawned in Max's eyes, accompanied by something that looked like fear. Aria, he said quietly, what you're describing has never been attempted. The risks are irrelevant, she interrupted, echoing his earlier words. Because the alternative is watching your pack die while someone drags me away to become their personal weapon. Outside, the sound of approaching aircraft grew closer, and Elena's tactical displays showed the first wave of confused soldiers beginning to regroup despite their equipment failures. Max stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be connected to every member of my pack, permanently linked to the supernatural world. Then we'd better make sure it works, Aria said, reaching for him with one hand while maintaining her connection to the neural interface with the other. When their fingers touched, the world exploded into sensation, and the real battle for their future began. Chapter 5. The moment Max's hand closed over hers, Aria's consciousness exploded beyond anything she'd experienced with the quantum neural interface. The connection wasn't just technological anymore, it was primal, ancient, and absolutely overwhelming. Through the mate bond, she suddenly understood what it meant to be a werewolf alpha. Max's awareness of his pack flooded through her enhanced mind like a living network, 42 individual consciousness that looked to him for leadership, protection, and purpose. But beneath that supernatural hierarchy, she sensed something else, a raw power that made her quantum enhancements feel like a child's toy. Aria, Max's voice sounded strange, as if it was coming from inside her own head. Can you feel them? She could feel everything. Elena's fierce loyalty mixed with worry for the pack's safety. Marcus's tactical mind calculating attack vectors and defensive positions. The younger pack members' excitement at the prospect of battle, tempered by the more experienced wolves' understanding of the stakes. But there was more. Through Max's alpha connection, she could sense the natural world around them, every animal within miles, the rhythm of the ocean, even the approaching storm that her enhanced meteorological awareness told her would arrive within the hour. "It's incredible," she whispered, then gasped as new information flooded through the bond. "Max, your pack isn't just werewolves. There's something else. Something older." His steel-gray eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Through their connection, Aria accessed memories that weren't hers, images of pack members whose abilities went beyond simple shape-shifting. Elena, whose silver-streaked hair reflected actual control over electromagnetic fields. Marcus, whose tactical brilliance came from supernatural pattern recognition that bordered on precognition. Others with abilities that modern science would classify as impossible. "You're not just an alpha werewolf," she said, understanding flooding through her quantum-enhanced consciousness. "You're the alpha of a supernatural collective that's been hiding in plain sight for decades." Before Max could respond, Elena's voice cut through their shared awareness like a blade. "Alpha, aerial units are beginning their approach. We have maybe 30 seconds. Through the estate's security cameras, Aria watched as military helicopters swept in from the ocean, their searchlights turning night into harsh daylight. But now, connected to both the technological and supernatural worlds, she could perceive things that should have been invisible. The aircraft weren't just carrying soldiers. They had something else on board, something that made her newly awakened supernatural senses recoil with instinctive fear. "Dampening fields," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the pack bond. "They have technology that suppresses supernatural abilities. That's why they're so confident about the odds." Max's fury flowed through their connection like molten metal. Who would develop something like that? "Someone who's been studying supernatural entities for a very long time," Aria replied, her enhanced mind processing implications at quantum speed. "Max, this isn't just about my technology. Someone's been planning a war between our worlds, and they need me to tip the balance." Through the estate's communication systems, she detected encrypted transmissions between the attacking forces. But with her consciousness now expanded beyond purely human limitations, decryption was a matter of pattern recognition rather than computational power. What she found made her blood run cold. "They're not planning to capture me," she said, her voice carrying the flat certainty of enhanced intuition. "They're planning to study me. Vivisection, neural mapping, complete dissection of my abilities to create an army of technologically enhanced super soldiers." The pack bond carried her fear and fury to every werewolf in the compound, and their collective response was immediate and primal. Through Max's alpha awareness, she felt 42 supernatural predators preparing for a fight to the death. "Elena," Max's voice carried the absolute authority that had made him the most powerful alpha on the East Coast. "Initiate Omega Protocol." "Alpha, are you certain?" Elena's response carried undertones of shock. "We've never tested." "Do it." Aria felt Elena's acceptance flow through the pack bond, followed immediately by something that made her quantum-enhanced consciousness real with possibility. Every member of Max's pack began activating abilities she hadn't known existed. Not just shape-shifting, but electromagnetic manipulation, reality distortion, even localized gravitational effects. "What's Omega Protocol?" she asked. "The reason," Max said, his hand tightening on hers as power flowed between them, "that Steel Dynamics became a $20 billion empire in less than 10 years. We're not just werewolves hiding among humans, Aria. We're the next step in evolution, and we've been preparing for this war longer than our enemies realize." Through the security cameras, she watched as the first helicopter began its descent toward the main landing pad. But instead of the easy target the pilot expected, he found Elena standing in the open, her silver hair whipping in the rotor wash as she raised both hands toward the aircraft. Lightning didn't come from the storm clouds above. It came from Elena herself, arcing upward in a brilliant display of electromagnetic fury that turned the helicopter's advanced electronics into expensive scrap metal. The aircraft auto-rotated down in an emergency landing that left its occupants alive, but thoroughly demoralized. "How is that possible?" Aria breathed. "The same way your quantum neural interface is possible," Max replied, his voice carrying new harmonics that resonated through her enhanced awareness. "Evolution doesn't stop just because humanity thinks it understands the rules." Through the pack bond, she felt other abilities manifesting across the estate. Marcus was somehow making attacking soldiers lose track of time and direction, wandering in circles through terrain they'd mapped minutes earlier. Younger pack members were creating illusions that made thermal imaging equipment show heat signatures in impossible locations. Most remarkably, she sensed pack members whose abilities interfaced directly with technology, not through quantum computing like her own, but through some form of supernatural electromagnetic manipulation that turned enemy equipment into allies. "You've been building this for years," she realized. "A supernatural collective hidden within a legitimate business empire." "Decades," Max corrected. "Ever since we realized that the old ways of hiding from human civilization weren't going to work in the modern world. If we couldn't hide from technology, we needed to master it." Another helicopter attempted an approach, this one equipped with the dampening fields she'd detected earlier. But Aria's connection to both technological and supernatural systems let her perceive something the attackers hadn't anticipated. Their suppression technology worked by blocking specific frequency ranges, not by eliminating supernatural abilities entirely. "Max," she said, her voice carrying the excitement of scientific discovery mixed with predatory satisfaction. "Their dampening fields have gaps in the spectrum. If we coordinate your pack's abilities with precise frequency modulation." Understanding flowed through their bond faster than words. Max's alpha authority combined with Aria's technological enhancement created something new, a supernatural network that operated on quantum principles, allowing the pack to coordinate their abilities with scientific precision. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of what happened when ancient power met cutting-edge intelligence. Helicopters found their navigation systems rewritten by electromagnetic pulses that placed them miles from their actual positions. Soldiers discovered that their advanced communication equipment was now broadcasting coordinates that led them in circles. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures that corresponded to nothing in physical reality. Most effectively, the dampening fields designed to suppress supernatural abilities found themselves interfacing with Aria's quantum neural network, their suppression patterns redirected into enhancement protocols that amplified pack abilities instead of blocking them. "Impossible." Elena's voice carried wonder as she manipulated electromagnetic fields with precision that should have required massive industrial equipment. "Alpha, the enhancement effect is extraordinary. It's as if Dr. Sterling's technology is teaching us to use abilities we never knew we possessed." But through her expanded awareness, Aria detected something that made triumph turn to ice-cold fear. The attacking forces weren't retreating. They were regrouping with military precision, their confusion replaced by a new tactical approach that suggested their mysterious employer had anticipated exactly this scenario. "Max," she said, her enhanced senses picking up electromagnetic signatures that made her supernatural instincts scream warnings. "They have a contingency plan. Something they didn't deploy in the first wave, because they were hoping to capture me intact." Through the estate's sensor network, she watched as the remaining aircraft moved into new positions, no longer attempting direct assault but establishing what looked like a containment perimeter at maximum range. "What kind of contingency?" Max asked, his alpha awareness already detecting the shift in enemy tactics. Aria's connection to every electronic system within 50 miles suddenly revealed the answer, and what she found made her enhanced consciousness recoil with horror. "Orbital strike," she whispered. "They have military satellites repositioning for kinetic bombardment. They're going to level the entire compound rather than risk losing me to your pack." The implication hit Max with the force of a physical blow, and through their bond, she felt his protective instincts war with tactical reality. 42 supernatural lives against a weapon system that could turn Lunar Point into a crater. "How long?" he asked. Aria's quantum-enhanced mind calculated orbital mechanics, satellite positioning, and targeting protocols with mathematical precision. 18 minutes. Elena's voice cut through the pack bond, carrying the calm professionalism that had made her indispensable to Steele Dynamics. Alpha, extraction protocols are ready. We can have the pack evacuated in 12 minutes. And go where? Max's response carried the bitter knowledge of someone who understood the resources arrayed against them. Whoever's behind this has the funding to field private armies and commandeer military satellites. They'll hunt us across continents. Through her technological awareness, Aria sensed something else, data streams flowing between the attacking forces and a source that her enhanced pattern recognition couldn't quite identify. But there was something familiar about the data protocols, something that made her scientific mind race with possibilities. Max, she said slowly, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to align in her consciousness. I need to trace their communication protocols. If I can identify who's coordinating this operation. Too dangerous, he said immediately. If you expand your consciousness that far through hostile networks, they might be able to trace you back. They might, Aria agreed, her quantum-enhanced mind already calculating probabilities. But right now, they're going to kill everyone I care about in 16 minutes. I'd rather take the risk. Max's steel-gray eyes met hers, and through their bond, she felt his understanding, not just of the tactical situation, but of who she was becoming. No longer the quiet researcher who'd been content to work in Chrome Industries laboratories, but something new and dangerous and absolutely determined to protect the people she loved. Do it, he said. Aria pressed both hands against the quantum neural interface and let her consciousness explode outward across the global communication network, following data streams across continents in search of the puppet master behind tonight's assault. What she found, buried in encrypted servers halfway around the world, made her enhanced awareness real with betrayal so profound it nearly severed her connection to the pack bond entirely. No, she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics of shock that resonated through every supernatural entity in the compound. It can't be. But the data was incontrovertible, and her quantum-enhanced pattern recognition left no room for doubt about who had been orchestrating the war between worlds. Someone she'd trusted. Someone who'd had access to her research from the very beginning. Someone who was supposed to be on their side. Chapter 6. The name that appeared in Aria's enhanced consciousness hit her like a physical blow. Dr. David Chen, CEO of Chrome Industries and the man who'd sat across from her in countless board meetings, discussing the future of quantum computing technology. But the data streams she was tracing revealed a truth that made her quantum-enhanced mind real, with implications. Chen wasn't just Chrome's CEO, he was the primary coordinator for something called Project Synthesis, a decades-long operation designed to identify and catalog supernatural entities operating within the corporate world. Aria? Max's voice carried concern through their bond as he felt her shock ripple across the pack connection. What did you find? She pulled her consciousness back from the global network, her enhanced awareness now carrying the bitter taste of betrayal.
Chun.
It's been Chen all along. Through the quantum neural interface, she shared what she discovered. Server farms in 12 countries, all funded through shell companies traced back to Chrome Industries. Databases containing detailed profiles of supernatural entities, their abilities, their weaknesses, and their integration into human society. Max's fury flowed through their bond like molten steel. He's been studying us for years. Not just studying, Aria said, her enhanced mind processing the full scope of what she'd found. Preparing for genocide. Project Synthesis isn't about coexistence between supernatural and human worlds. It's about ensuring human dominance through technological superiority. Through her connection to the global communication network, she accessed Chen's real-time communications with the attack force. What she heard made her blood run cold. Alpha Steele's pack represents the greatest threat to human technological supremacy we've yet identified. Chen's voice carried through encrypted channels to military coordinators around the world. Dr. Sterling's integration with their supernatural collective could create an evolutionary leap that makes humanity obsolete. Max's hand tightened on hers, his alpha dominance flaring through the pack bond in ways that made every werewolf in the compound growl with shared fury. He's not wrong about the evolutionary leap. Aria felt it too, through her quantum-neural interface. She was no longer just connected to Max's pack, but fundamentally changed by that connection. Her consciousness now operated on multiple levels simultaneously: human intelligence, quantum processing power, and something new that could only be described as supernatural intuition. The orbital strike, she said, her enhanced awareness already calculating new possibilities. Chen's using it as a test. If kinetic bombardment can eliminate a supernatural collective of our capabilities, human military technology remains dominant. And if it can't? Max asked. Then he escalates to nuclear weapons, Aria replied, her voice carrying the flat certainty of enhanced pattern recognition. I can see the authorization protocols in his secondary servers. He's prepared to sacrifice 100-square-mile area to prove that human technology can eliminate any supernatural threat. Through the estate's security systems, she watched as the remaining attack helicopters pulled back to what they clearly considered a safe distance. Chen's voice continued coordinating the orbital strike through encrypted channels, his tone carrying the clinical detachment of someone orchestrating genocide for the greater good of humanity. 14 minutes until impact, Elena's voice cut through their shared awareness. Alpha, I'm reading massive electromagnetic buildup from the satellite positioning themselves overhead. But Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness was already several steps ahead, following implications that her human mind wouldn't have been able to process. Max, Chen made one critical error in his calculations. What kind of error? He assumes that my integration with your pack is limited to enhanced supernatural abilities, she said, her enhanced awareness revealing possibilities that bordered on science fiction. But the quantum neural interface doesn't just amplify consciousness. It creates permanent neural pathways that allow for direct technological integration. Through their bond, Max felt her excitement building, accompanied by something that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his human consciousness. Meaning I'm not just connected to your pack anymore, Aria said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions her human mind couldn't have perceived. I'm connected to every piece of technology within a 1,000-mile radius, including the satellites Chen's using for the orbital strike. Understanding flowed through the pack bond like lightning, accompanied by Elena's sharp intake of breath as she grasped the implications. Dr. Sterling, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Chen's about to learn why starting a war with a techno-witch was a very bad idea, Aria interrupted, her consciousness already expanding beyond the confines of Earth's atmosphere. The sensation of interfacing with orbital systems was unlike anything she'd experienced. Through the quantum neural interface, enhanced by the mate bond and amplified by the pack's collective supernatural abilities, her awareness touched military satellites positioned hundreds of miles above Earth's surface. What she found there made her enhanced consciousness laugh with predatory satisfaction. Chen's orbital strike capability depended on 3 military satellites equipped with kinetic bombardment systems, tungsten rods that could be dropped from orbit with the destructive force of nuclear weapons, but without the radioactive fallout. But military satellites, no matter how advanced, were still just very expensive computers floating in space. And computers, even military-grade ones, were vulnerable to someone who could interface with their systems at a quantum level. Aria, Max's voice carried warning through their bond as he felt her consciousness extending beyond the planet itself. The energy requirements for what you're attempting are available, she finished, her awareness now distributed across multiple dimensions of technological and supernatural space. Your pack's abilities, my quantum processing power, and the neural pathways created by the mate bond. It's enough. Through her connection to Chen's communication networks, she listened as countdown protocols began for the orbital strike. 10 minutes. 9 minutes. 8 minutes. Time to show Chen exactly what happened when someone threatened her mate and his pack. The first satellite's targeting system began receiving new coordinates, not for Lunar Point, but for a stretch of empty ocean 50 miles east. The second satellite found its kinetic bombardment system suddenly unable to distinguish between authorized and unauthorized launch commands. The third satellite, the one carrying the most powerful weapons, experienced something that should have been impossible. Its quantum-encrypted command systems began receiving instructions that originated from Earth's surface, but carried authorization codes that existed only in the satellite's own memory banks. Impossible. Chen's voice carried panic through the communication networks as his orbital weapons platform began operating beyond his control. The targeting systems are military-grade. No civilian technology should be able to interface with. His words cut off as Aria's consciousness fully integrated with the satellite's quantum processing core, and suddenly, she wasn't just accessing the weapon system, she was the weapon system. "Hello, Dr. Chen," she said, her voice now broadcasting through every communication channel the attack force was using. "This is Dr. Aria Sterling, and I believe you've been looking for me." The response was immediate. Panic from the ground forces, desperate commands to abort the orbital strike, and Chen's voice screaming for backup systems that no longer responded to his authorization codes. "You don't understand what you're doing," Chen's voice carried through the hijacked communication network. "The integration of supernatural abilities with advanced technology represents an existential threat to human civilization." "You're right," Aria replied, her consciousness now distributed across a network that spanned from Earth's surface to orbital space. "I don't understand what I'm doing, but I'm learning very quickly." Through the quantum neural interface, enhanced by the pack bond and amplified by technological systems that spanned continents, she began rewriting the rules of engagement for Chen's war against the supernatural world. Military satellites found their targeting systems redirected toward the private server farms that housed Project Synthesis's databases. Communication networks began broadcasting the locations and identities of every supernatural entity Chen had been tracking, but with a twist. The information was being sent to those entities themselves, warning them about the threat they faced. Most satisfyingly, every piece of electronic equipment within a 50-mile radius of Chen's current location began broadcasting his real-time coordinates to the supernatural communities he'd been hunting. "You wanted to study the integration of supernatural abilities with advanced technology," Aria said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensional frequencies. "Congratulations, Dr. Chen. You're about to become the subject of your own experiment." But even as triumph flowed through the pack bond, her enhanced awareness detected something that made her quantum-enhanced consciousness recoil with alarm. Chen had one final contingency, a dead man's switch that would activate if he lost control of Project Synthesis. Nuclear weapons. Not orbital strikes or conventional military force, but actual nuclear weapons positioned in major population centers around the world, ready to detonate if the supernatural world gained too much technological advantage. "Max," she said, her voice carrying urgency that made every werewolf in the compound snap to attention. "Chen has nuclear failsafes. If I maintain control of these systems, he'll trigger weapons that will kill millions of innocent people." Through their bond, she felt Max's understanding and his absolute refusal to let her sacrifice herself to save the pack. "Then we find a third option," he said, his alpha authority flowing through their connection with the force of absolute determination. "Because I'm not losing you, and I'm not letting him commit genocide in the name of human preservation." Aria's quantum-enhanced mind raced through possibilities, her consciousness distributed across technological and supernatural networks that spanned the globe. Somewhere in the vast complexity of human and supernatural civilization, there had to be a solution that didn't require choosing between her life and the lives of millions. And in the distance, she could hear the sound of new helicopters approaching, but these carried different electromagnetic signatures, and their approach vectors suggested rescue rather than attack. Someone else had entered the game, and Aria's enhanced awareness was about to reveal that the war between worlds was far more complicated than either she or Chen had realized. Chapter 7. The approaching helicopters carried electromagnetic signatures that made Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness pause in recognition. These weren't military aircraft or corporate security, they were broadcasting identification codes that her expanded awareness traced to a source that should have been impossible. The Supernatural Council of North America, an organization that, according to every database she could access, didn't officially exist. "Max," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through their pack bond. "We're about to have very interesting company." Through the estate's security cameras, she watched as 3 sleek aircraft touched down on Lunar Point's secondary landing pad. The figures that emerged moved with a fluid grace she'd learned to associate with supernatural entities, but there was something more, an authority that made even her quantum-enhanced consciousness recognize a power structure that predated human civilization. The woman who led the group was perhaps 60, with silver hair that seemed to shimmer with its own light and amber eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. She wore a perfectly tailored business suit that couldn't quite hide the aura of ancient power that surrounded her like electromagnetic fields. "Alpha Steele," the woman called across the grounds, her voice carrying clearly despite the distance and the chaos of Chen's retreating forces. "I am Counselor Lydia Thorne. We need to talk." Max's reaction flowed through their bond, surprise mixed with something that might have been relief. "The Council never intervenes directly." "They do now," Aria said, her enhanced awareness picking up communication streams between the newcomers that carried encryption protocols she couldn't break. Whatever the Supernatural Council was discussing, they had security measures that exceeded even military standards. Elena's voice cut through their shared consciousness. "Alpha, should I maintain defensive positions?" "No," Max said, his decision flowing through the pack bond with Alpha authority. "If Counselor Thorne is here personally, the situation just became bigger than Chen's private war." They met the council delegation in Lunar Point's main conference room, the same space where Elena had first revealed Aria's supernatural heritage only hours earlier. But now the room felt different, charged with the kind of tension that preceded fundamental changes to the world's hidden power structure. Counselor Thorne studied Aria with unsettling intensity, her amber eyes seeming to perceive layers of reality that normal senses couldn't detect. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated through dimensions Aria's human mind couldn't have comprehended. "Dr. Sterling," Thorne said, settling into a chair that somehow managed to look like a throne. "You've created quite a disturbance in the balance between worlds." "I've created a quantum neural interface for medical research," Aria replied, her enhanced consciousness automatically analyzing threat levels and calculating response probabilities. "Everything else has been other people trying to kill me for it." Thorne's smile carried the dangerous beauty of a predator recognizing worthy prey. "Your technology, combined with your apparently supernatural heritage, represents the first successful bridge between technological and magical evolution in over 3,000 years. The implications are significant." Through her connection to the global communication network, Aria continued monitoring Chen's activities. His nuclear failsafes were still active, positioned in 7 major cities with dead man switches that would trigger if he didn't check in every 12 hours. But there was something else. New communication patterns suggesting that Chen wasn't working alone. Other corporate entities, other government agencies, other individuals who saw the integration of supernatural and technological power as an existential threat to human dominance. "Counselor Thorne," Max said, his alpha authority adding weight to his words. "What does the council know about Project Synthesis?" "More than we should have allowed to develop," Thorne replied, her expression darkening with what looked like regret. "Dr. Chen's organization has been identifying and cataloging supernatural entities for over 20 years. We've been monitoring their activities." Monitoring. Aria's enhanced consciousness detected emotional undertones in Thorne's voice that suggested the council's involvement was more complex than simple observation. Or collaborating? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as Thorne's amber eyes flashed with something that made Aria's supernatural instincts scream warnings. But the counselor's response, when it came, carried the weight of absolute honesty. "Both," she said. The council believed that limited cooperation with human authorities would prevent exactly the kind of technological arms race your abilities represent. We were wrong. Through the pack bond, Aria felt Max's fury at the implications. "You've been selling out supernatural communities to maintain political balance. We've been preventing a war that would have killed millions on both sides," Thorne corrected, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making impossible decisions. "But Dr. Sterling's emergence has changed the fundamental equation." Before anyone could respond, Alarms began blaring throughout the compound. Elena's voice cut through their conversation with military precision. Alpha, we have incoming ballistic missiles. Multiple warheads, approaching from 3 different vectors. Aria's consciousness exploded outward across the global defense network, her enhanced awareness immediately identifying the threat. Not Chen's orbital weapons, those were still under her control, but submarine-launched ballistic missiles carrying conventional warheads, but with enough destructive power to level half of Long Island. Chen's partners, she said, her voice carrying the flat certainty of quantum-enhanced pattern recognition. Military contractors with access to nuclear submarine fleets. They're escalating beyond what he can control. Through her connection to satellite surveillance systems, she watched as 6 ballistic missiles arced through the upper atmosphere, their trajectories calculated to impact Lunar Point in less than 4 minutes. Can you intercept them? Max asked, his alpha awareness already coordinating evacuation protocols through the pack bond. Aria's enhanced consciousness raced through possibilities, her quantum neural interface seeking connection points with missile defense systems, satellite networks, even the missiles themselves. What she found made her supernatural instincts recoil with alarm. They're hardened against electronic interference, she said. Military-grade quantum encryption, isolated guidance systems, and electromagnetic shielding that's specifically designed to prevent the kind of technological integration I've been using. Counselor Thorne stood with fluid grace, her amber eyes beginning to glow with inner fire. Then it's time you learned that technology isn't the only power available to you, Dr. Sterling. What do you mean? Your quantum neural interface doesn't just enhance human cognitive abilities, Thorne said, moving to the windows that offered a view of the approaching dawn. It awakens dormant supernatural capabilities that have been breeding true in certain human bloodlines for millennia. You're not just a techno-witch, you're a bridge, someone capable of unifying magical and technological power in ways that make both stronger. Through the pack bond, Aria felt Max's sudden understanding, accompanied by something that might have been awe. The mate bond. It's not just connecting us emotionally, it's creating a unified supernatural technological network. Precisely, Thorne said. And right now, that network is the only thing powerful enough to stop those missiles without escalating Chen's nuclear failsafes. Aria's enhanced awareness suddenly perceived new layers of reality, energy patterns that existed beyond the electromagnetic spectrum, consciousness networks that operated on quantum principles she was only beginning to understand, and power sources that made her technological abilities feel like the first tentative steps of a much larger evolution. Show me, she said. Thorne raised her hand, and suddenly the conference room filled with visible energy, streams of power that connected every supernatural entity present in ways that transcended physical space. Through her quantum neural interface, Aria could see the true structure of what they were building. Not just a pack bond or a technological network, but something entirely new. 3 minutes until impact, Elena's voice carried through their shared awareness. Aria pressed both hands against the quantum neural interface and let her consciousness expand beyond anything she'd previously attempted. Through the mate bond, she drew on Max's alpha connection to the pack. Through her supernatural heritage, she accessed energy sources that operated on principles modern science hadn't discovered. Through her technological integration, she reached across continents to every piece of advanced electronics that could be turned to their defense. What emerged wasn't just enhanced human capability or amplified supernatural power. It was something that transcended the boundaries between technological and magical evolution. The ballistic missiles, hardened against electronic interference and shielded against supernatural influence, suddenly found themselves dealing with something that was both and neither. Aria's consciousness, distributed across multiple dimensions of reality, began rewriting the fundamental forces that governed their flight paths. Gravity fields that had remained constant since the missile's launch began fluctuating in ways that sent them off course. Electromagnetic fields that should have been stable started generating interference that confused guidance systems specifically designed to resist electronic warfare. Most impossibly, the quantum states that determined the missile's position in space-time began shifting in response to consciousness operating on principles that bridged magic and science. Impossible. Chen's voice carried through hijacked communication channels as his partner's ultimate weapons began behaving in ways that violated every physical law they understood. No single entity should be able to influence ballistic trajectories at that scale. "You're right," Aria replied, her voice now broadcasting across multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. "No single entity can. But I'm not single anymore." Through the conference room windows, they watched as 6 ballistic missiles, each carrying enough conventional explosives to level a city block, harmlessly impacted empty ocean hundreds of miles from their intended targets. But the effort had cost her something. Aria felt her consciousness beginning to fragment across the vast network she'd created, her human identity threatening to dissolve into the larger structure of supernatural and technological integration. "Aria," Max's voice reached her through the pack bond, carrying the anchor of their mate connection. "Come back to me." She felt his alpha dominance wrapping around her scattered consciousness like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of complete integration with the global information network. When her awareness finally stabilized back in her own body, she found herself surrounded by concerned faces and the lingering taste of power that made her quantum-enhanced mind hunger for more. "Well," Counselor Thorne said, her amber eyes reflecting what might have been approval. "That was significantly more impressive than our projections suggested." "Your projections?" Aria's enhanced hearing caught something in Thorne's voice that made her supernatural instincts sharpen with suspicion. "The Council has been monitoring your development since you first activated the quantum neural interface," Thorne admitted. "We needed to understand the potential for supernatural technological integration before deciding whether you represented evolution or extinction for our worlds." Max's fury flowed through their bond like molten steel. "You've been using her as a test subject. We've been ensuring that if bridge capabilities emerged in this generation, they would be wielded by someone capable of wisdom rather than conquest," Thorne corrected. "Dr. Sterling has passed every evaluation." Through her connection to Chen's communication networks, Aria detected something that made her enhanced consciousness go cold with realization. "Counselor Thorne, exactly how long has the Council been working with Project Synthesis?" "Long enough to realize that cooperation was the only alternative to mutual annihilation," Thorne replied, but her amber eyes carried something that suggested the truth was more complicated. "Long enough," Aria said, her quantum-enhanced pattern recognition suddenly revealing connections she should have seen earlier, to help them develop the technology they've been using to hunt supernatural entities. The silence that followed carried the weight of revelations that would reshape the balance between worlds, and Aria realized that the war she'd been fighting was far from over. It was just beginning. Chapter 8. The revelation hung in the conference room's air like poisonous gas, and through the pack bond, Aria felt Max's alpha dominance shift from protective to predatory as he processed the implications of what she'd discovered. "Counselor Thorne," his voice carried harmonics that made every supernatural entity in the room step back unconsciously. "Are you telling us that the Council has been collaborating with the people trying to commit genocide against our communities?" Thorne's amber eyes reflected something that might have been shame, but her voice remained steady with the authority of centuries. "We've been preventing a war that would have exposed the supernatural world to complete human military response. Sometimes prevention requires difficult choices." Through her quantum neural interface, Aria dove deeper into the global communication networks, her enhanced consciousness following data trails that led to servers she hadn't accessed before. What she found there made her supernatural instincts scream with rage. Project Synthesis wasn't just cataloging supernatural entities, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions her human mind couldn't have perceived. They were developing containment protocols, weapon systems specifically designed to neutralize supernatural abilities, and extraction techniques for studying captured entities. She shared what she'd found through the pack bond, images that made Max's wolf pace restlessly beneath his human consciousness. Laboratories where supernatural entities had been held for experimentation. Technology that converted supernatural energy into power sources for human military applications. Research facilities that studied the integration of supernatural abilities with human enhancement programs. And the Council provided the supernatural subjects for these experiments, Aria continued, her enhanced awareness revealing communication logs that documented decades of betrayal. Rogues, outcasts, anyone who threatened the Council's version of peaceful coexistence. We provided individuals who were already endangering the treaty balance, Thorne said, but her voice carried defensive undertones that her authority couldn't quite mask. The alternative was full military response against entire supernatural communities. Max's fury exploded through the pack bond with such force that windows throughout the compound began vibrating in harmonic response. You sold our people to human scientists to maintain your political power. We maintained peace between worlds, Thorne replied, her amber eyes beginning to glow with supernatural fire. Do you have any comprehension of what human military response looks like when they perceive an existential threat? Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, orbital bombardment platforms that could sterilize entire continents. Through her connection to military communication networks, Aria detected something that made her enhanced consciousness go cold with understanding. They still can. Chen's nuclear failsafes aren't just positioned in population centers, they're targeting supernatural communities. If he triggers them, he'll eliminate both human cities and supernatural strongholds simultaneously. The implications rippled through the pack bond like shockwaves. Elena's voice cut through their shared awareness with military precision. Alpha, if Chen's partners are willing to sacrifice their own population centers to eliminate supernatural threats, then the Council's cooperation has been funding the development of a genocide weapon, Max finished, his voice carrying the kind of controlled rage that preceded lethal action. Counselor Thorne moved to the windows, her amber eyes scanning the horizon where dawn was beginning to break over the Atlantic. The situation has evolved beyond our original parameters. Dr. Sterling's emergence as a bridge has fundamentally altered the balance of power between worlds. Because I can do things that make your political arrangements irrelevant, Aria said, her quantum-enhanced consciousness already calculating possibilities that spanned both technological and supernatural dimensions. Because you can do things that make the separation between worlds obsolete, Thorne corrected. Your abilities represent the potential for complete integration between supernatural and technological evolution. That threatens everyone who derives power from maintaining the current balance. Through her connection to global surveillance networks, Aria watched as military forces around the world began mobilizing in patterns that suggested coordination at the highest levels of government. Not just Chen's corporate partnerships, but actual national military responses to what intelligence agencies were classifying as a supernatural weapons emergence. How many governments know about tonight? She asked. All of them, Thorne replied. Your demonstration with the ballistic missiles was observed by satellite surveillance systems on every continent. The integration of supernatural and technological capabilities at that scale, it's the paradigm shift every intelligence agency has been preparing for. Max's alpha awareness expanded through the pack bond, sharing tactical assessments with military precision. They're treating this as first contact with a hostile alien species. They're treating this as the emergence of a superior evolutionary branch that could make humanity obsolete, Thorne said. Which, from their perspective, is exactly what it is. Through the quantum neural interface, Aria felt her consciousness touching information networks that spanned the globe, revealing the scope of what they were facing. Military bases on full alert. Research facilities activating containment protocols developed specifically for supernatural entities. Communication networks buzzing with contingency plans that ranged from targeted elimination to complete nuclear response. Chen's partners aren't just corporate military contractors, she realized. They're representing a coalition of human governments that have been preparing for this scenario for decades. Project Synthesis was never just about studying supernatural entities, Thorne confirmed. It was about developing the technological capability to maintain human dominance if supernatural technological integration ever emerged. The conference room fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. They weren't just fighting Chen's private war or even the Council's political machinations. They were facing a coordinated response from human civilization itself. So what happens now? Elena asked, her tactical mind already calculating odds that didn't favor their survival. Before anyone could answer, Aria's enhanced hearing detected something that made her quantum-enhanced consciousness race with new possibilities. Through global communication networks, she was picking up encrypted transmissions that suggested not all human governments were united in their response to supernatural technological integration. "There's something else," she said, her voice carrying the excitement of scientific discovery mixed with desperate hope. "The governmental response isn't unanimous. Some intelligence agencies are arguing for cooperation rather than elimination." Through her connection to classified communication networks, she shared what she'd found: debate transcripts from emergency sessions of the United Nations Security Council, where representatives argued about whether supernatural technological integration represented a threat or an opportunity for human evolution. "The European Union is proposing joint research initiatives," she continued, her enhanced awareness revealing communication patterns that suggested complex political maneuvering. "The Japanese government wants to study the potential for technological enhancement of human capabilities. Even some American agencies are arguing for diplomatic contact rather than military response." Max's alpha instincts sharpened as he processed the implications. "They want to control us rather than eliminate us." "Some of them," Aria agreed. "Others still prefer Chen's approach: complete elimination before we become too powerful to contain." Counselor Thorne turned back from the windows, her amber eyes reflecting something that might have been calculation. "Which creates an opportunity. If human civilization is divided in their response, the Council might be able to negotiate from a position of strength rather than accommodation." "The Council's negotiating days are over," Max said, his voice carrying alpha authority that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. "Your cooperation with Project Synthesis has cost too many supernatural lives to be forgiven. And your mate's abilities have made negotiation irrelevant," Thorne replied, her gaze fixing on Aria with unsettling intensity. "Dr. Sterling, you now possess the power to force cooperation rather than request it. The question is whether you have the wisdom to use that power responsibly." Through the quantum neural interface, Aria felt the truth of Thorne's words resonating through every dimension of her enhanced consciousness. She could feel the global information network responding to her will, military satellites repositioning at her command, communication systems carrying her voice to any audience she chose. The power was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "There's a fourth option," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the very structure of reality. "Not elimination, not control, not negotiation, but evolution." "What do you mean?" Max asked, though through their bond, she could feel his understanding beginning to form. "I mean, we stop thinking about supernatural and human as separate species," Aria said, her quantum-enhanced mind revealing possibilities that should have been impossible. "The quantum neural interface doesn't just enhance supernatural abilities, it can awaken them in ordinary humans. We could offer evolution instead of threatening extinction." The implications exploded through the pack bond like lightning, accompanied by Thorne's sharp intake of breath as she grasped what Aria was suggesting. "Voluntary enhancement," Elena said, her tactical mind immediately calculating strategic advantages. "Turn the arms race into a cooperation opportunity." "Impossible," Thorne said, but her amber eyes reflected something that looked like hope. "The technological requirements alone would take decades to develop. Not for someone who can interface with global manufacturing networks at a quantum level," Aria replied, her consciousness already touching industrial systems across multiple continents. "I could have prototypes in production within days, distribution networks within weeks." Through her connection to Chen's communication systems, she detected his response to what they were discussing, panic so intense it was affecting his ability to coordinate with his governmental partners. "Chen's triggering his nuclear failsafes," she said, her enhanced awareness suddenly detecting activation sequences for weapons positioned in 7 cities around the world. He'd rather commit genocide than risk losing human technological supremacy. Max's alpha dominance exploded through the pack bond with lethal intent. "How long before detonation?" 72 minutes, Aria replied, her quantum-enhanced consciousness already racing across global communication networks in search of countermeasures. "Can you stop them?" Thorne asked. Aria felt the mate bond resonating with Max's absolute confidence in her abilities, the pack connection amplifying her supernatural heritage, and the quantum neural interface granting access to technological systems that spanned continents. "I can do something better," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the conference room's windows vibrate with supernatural resonance. "I can turn Chen's genocide weapon into humanity's first glimpse of evolutionary enhancement."
How?
Max asked. Aria smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like she was finally playing the game on her terms. "By giving every human within 1,000 miles of those nuclear weapons a choice," she said. "Evolve or die with the old world." Through the quantum neural interface, she began reaching across continents towards 7 cities where nuclear weapons were counting down toward detonation, and the real war for the future of both species was about to begin. Chapter 9. The quantum neural interface had never been pushed to the limits Aria was attempting now. As her consciousness expanded across 7 continents simultaneously, seeking the nuclear weapons Chen had positioned in major population centers, she felt her human identity beginning to fracture under the strain of processing information on a global scale. Through the mate bond, Max's alpha strength flowed into her scattered awareness like an anchor, keeping her grounded in her physical form while her enhanced consciousness touched systems in New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo. In each city, nuclear weapons with yields capable of eliminating millions of lives were counting down toward detonation in 68 minutes. "Aria," Max's voice reached her through dimensions that her human mind couldn't have comprehended. "I can feel you fragmenting. Pull back." "Can't," she replied, her voice echoing strangely as part of her awareness remained distributed across multiple information networks. "The nuclear weapons have quantum-encrypted failsafes. If I don't maintain continuous interface with all 7 systems simultaneously, Chen can trigger them remotely." Through her connection to global communication networks, she could hear Chen coordinating with his governmental partners, his voice carrying the desperate authority of someone watching carefully laid plans collapse into chaos. "Execute Prometheus Protocol," Chen commanded through encrypted military channels. "Full nuclear response in all targeted population centers. We cannot allow supernatural technological integration to achieve critical mass." But Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness was already several steps ahead, following implications that her human mind wouldn't have been able to process. The nuclear weapons weren't just positioned to eliminate supernatural communities, they were placed to create maximum electromagnetic pulse effects that would cripple the technological infrastructure she was using to counter Chen's operations. "He's trying to force me to choose," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every supernatural entity in Lunar Point's conference room step back unconsciously. "Save the cities and lose my connection to global information networks, or maintain my technological integration and let millions of innocent people die." Counselor Thorne moved closer, her amber eyes reflecting something that looked like genuine respect. "There's a third option, Dr. Sterling. One that your human ethical framework might find challenging." "What kind of option?" "Use the nuclear weapon's own electromagnetic pulses as enhancement vectors," Thorne said, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "The same energy that would cripple normal technological systems could amplify supernatural abilities in anyone with dormant heritage." Through the pack bond, Aria felt Max's sharp intake of breath as he grasped the implications. "You're talking about forced evolution on a massive scale." "I'm talking about giving millions of humans the supernatural abilities they'll need to survive in a world where the old balance of power no longer exists," Thorne corrected. "Dr. Sterling's quantum neural interface has already demonstrated the potential for technological enhancement of supernatural capabilities. The nuclear weapons energy could trigger similar awakenings in human populations that carry dormant supernatural genetics." Aria's enhanced consciousness raced through the possibilities, her quantum-enhanced pattern recognition calculating probabilities at speeds that transcended normal human cognition. Through her connection to global genetic databases, she could identify human populations with the DNA markers that suggested supernatural heritage, roughly 12% of the global population, concentrated heavily in the 7 cities Chen had targeted. The electromagnetic pulse effects would awaken dormant abilities in approximately 40 million people, she said, her voice carrying the flat certainty of enhanced analytical processing. But the nuclear detonations would also kill approximately 60 million others. Unless, Elena's voice cut through their shared awareness with tactical precision, you could redirect the weapon's destructive force while maintaining their electromagnetic enhancement effects. Through the quantum neural interface, Aria felt possibilities opening that should have been impossible. Her consciousness, distributed across global information networks and amplified by the mate bond's connection to Max's pack, began perceiving the nuclear weapons not as instruments of destruction but as potential tools for controlled evolution. "I need more power," she said, her enhanced awareness already calculating the energy requirements for what she was contemplating. More than the pack bond can provide, more than the quantum neural interface can generate. "The Council maintains emergency power reserves," Thorne said, her amber eyes beginning to glow with supernatural fire. "Accumulated supernatural energy from every major supernatural community in North America. It's designed for species-level emergencies." "This qualifies," Max said, his alpha authority adding weight to the decision. "But Counselor, if we do this, the old agreements between the Council and human governments become irrelevant." "They became irrelevant the moment Dr. Sterling deflected ballistic missiles through force of will," Thorne replied. "We're not negotiating for coexistence anymore. We're managing the transition to a new evolutionary paradigm." Through her connection to Chen's communication networks, Aria detected something that made her quantum-enhanced consciousness race with urgency. Military forces in all 7 targeted cities were beginning evacuation procedures, but not for the general population, only for government officials and military personnel. "They know about the nuclear weapons," she said. "Chen's partners are evacuating their own people while leaving civilians to die." Max's fury exploded through the pack bond with such intensity that every piece of electronic equipment in the conference room began vibrating in harmonic response. "How long before detonation?" 52 minutes, Aria replied, her enhanced awareness already reaching toward the Council's emergency power reserves that Thorne was making available. The sensation of interfacing with accumulated supernatural energy was unlike anything she'd experienced. Through the quantum neural interface, she suddenly had access to power sources that operated on principles modern science hadn't discovered: life force distilled from centuries of supernatural existence, elemental energies that predated human civilization, and something else that felt like the planet's own evolutionary will. "Incredible," she whispered, her consciousness expanding beyond anything she'd previously attempted. With her awareness now amplified by both technological and supernatural power sources that spanned continents, Aria began the most complex operation of her existence, simultaneously interfacing with 7 nuclear weapons while calculating the precise electromagnetic manipulation required to transform weapons of mass destruction into tools of controlled evolution. Through global satellite networks, she watched as Chen's governmental partners completed their evacuations, leaving ordinary citizens in 7 major cities completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. 47 minutes. Elena's voice carried through the pack bond. Aria's enhanced consciousness touched each nuclear weapon's quantum-encrypted control systems, her awareness distributed across multiple dimensions of technological and supernatural space. What she found there made her realize that Chen had prepared for exactly this scenario. The weapons were designed to be tamper-proof even by someone with her enhanced capabilities. "The fail-safes are more complex than I anticipated," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the structure of reality itself. "Chun has quantum-locked the detonation sequences. If I try to disarm them conventionally, they'll automatically trigger." "Then don't disarm them," Max said, his alpha intuition grasping possibilities that her enhanced consciousness was revealing. "Transform them." Through the mate bond, she felt his absolute confidence in her abilities, accompanied by something deeper. A love so intense it transcended the boundaries between human and supernatural existence. That emotional connection became another power source, amplifying her capabilities beyond what she'd thought possible. "I need everyone to understand what's about to happen," Aria said, her quantum-enhanced awareness already beginning the most delicate operation of her existence. In 43 minutes, 7 nuclear weapons are going to detonate in major population centers around the world. But instead of creating fireballs that kill millions, they're going to generate controlled electromagnetic pulses that awaken supernatural abilities in anyone with dormant genetic heritage. And those who don't have supernatural genetics? Thorne asked. Will experience the most significant technological enhancement in human history, Aria replied, her consciousness now interfacing simultaneously with global manufacturing networks, communication systems, and the nuclear weapons themselves. The same electromagnetic energy that awakens supernatural abilities will also enhance human cognitive function and physical capabilities to levels that approach supernatural performance. Through her connection to global information networks, she began broadcasting on every communication frequency simultaneously: television, radio, internet, even emergency alert systems. Her voice, carrying harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensional frequencies, reached every electronic device on the planet. "Citizens of Earth," she said, her words translating automatically into every human language through quantum processing capabilities that transcended normal technological limitations. "In 38 minutes, your world will change forever. You have a choice: embrace evolution or cling to extinction." The response was immediate and chaotic. Global communication networks erupted with panic as governments struggled to maintain control over populations that were suddenly learning about the supernatural world's existence. Military forces around the world went to maximum alert as intelligence agencies realized they were facing something beyond their ability to contain or control. But through her enhanced awareness, Aria also detected something else: acceptance. In cities around the world, people were making the choice to trust in evolution rather than fear the unknown. 35 minutes, she said, her consciousness now distributed across systems that spanned the globe. The real transformation was about to begin. Chapter 10. The countdown to global evolution proceeded with the inevitability of natural law, but Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness was no longer focused solely on the nuclear weapons. Through her connection to global information networks, she was watching humanity's response to the choice she'd offered them, and what she saw revealed the true complexity of the species she was trying to save. In New York, emergency services were evacuating Manhattan while citizens streamed video footage of their decision to stay and embrace whatever enhancement was coming. In London, government officials were broadcasting desperate pleas for population evacuation while millions of people chose to remain in the enhancement zone. Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. In every targeted city, humanity was splitting into those who feared evolution and those who welcomed it. 28 minutes. Elena's voice carried through the pack bond, accompanied by tactical assessments that showed global military mobilization reaching critical mass. Through her interface with military communication networks, Aria detected something that made her enhanced consciousness race with new urgency. Chen's governmental partners weren't just evacuating their own personnel, they were positioning military forces around each targeted city to contain anyone who survived the enhancement process. They're planning to eliminate the enhanced populations immediately after the transformation, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the conference room's windows vibrate with supernatural resonance. Chen's partners see this as a controlled test of enhanced human capabilities followed by complete elimination of the test subjects. Max's alpha fury exploded through the pack bond with lethal intensity. 60 million people choosing evolution, and they want to murder them all for the crime of accepting enhancement. "Not if I have anything to say about it," Aria replied, her consciousness expanding beyond anything she'd previously attempted. Through the quantum neural interface, amplified by the Council's emergency power reserves and strengthened by the mate bond's connection to Max's supernatural authority, she began the most complex operation of her existence, simultaneously managing 7 nuclear transformations while establishing protective protocols for 60 million newly enhanced humans. The sensation was indescribable. Her awareness existed across multiple dimensions of technological and supernatural space, processing information at quantum speeds while maintaining emotional connections that kept her grounded in her humanity. Through satellite networks, she watched military formations converging on enhancement zones. Through communication systems, she heard Chen coordinating genocide protocols with his governmental partners. Through the global internet, she felt the hopes and fears of millions of people choosing to trust in evolution. Aria, Max's voice reached her through the pack bond, carrying the anchor of their mate connection. I can feel you fragmenting again. The energy requirements are too much for one consciousness to process. Then don't let me do it alone, she replied, her enhanced awareness suddenly perceiving possibilities that her human mind couldn't have imagined. Through the mate bond, she opened her consciousness completely to Max's alpha connection, allowing his supernatural authority to flow through the quantum neural interface and merge with her technological capabilities. The sensation was overwhelming, two consciousness becoming one, human intelligence fusing with supernatural instinct, technological precision merging with ancient power. But it wasn't enough. The scale of what she was attempting required more than even their combined abilities could provide. The pack, Max said, his understanding flowing through their shared consciousness. Open the bond to everyone. Through the pack connection, 42 supernatural entities suddenly found themselves linked to Aria's quantum-enhanced awareness. Elena's electromagnetic manipulation abilities interfaced directly with satellite control systems. Marcus's tactical precognition merged with military communication networks. Every pack member's unique supernatural capabilities became part of a collective consciousness that operated on principles that transcended both human and werewolf limitations. Extraordinary, Counselor Thorne breathed, her amber eyes reflecting awe as she observed the birth of something entirely new in evolutionary history. You're not just creating enhanced humans, you're demonstrating the potential for complete supernatural technological integration. 22 minutes, Aria said, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions her individual consciousness couldn't have perceived. Through the expanded network of supernatural and technological capabilities, she began final preparations for the most significant moment in human evolution since the development of language. 7 nuclear weapons would detonate simultaneously, their destructive potential transformed into enhancement vectors that would awaken supernatural abilities in 40 million people while technologically augmenting another 20 million. But the collective consciousness she'd created with Max's pack revealed something else. The enhancement process wouldn't just affect humans directly exposed to the electromagnetic pulses. The awakening would cascade through social and genetic networks, triggering dormant abilities in supernatural populations worldwide while inspiring technological innovation that would accelerate human development by centuries. The old world ends in 19 minutes, she announced through every communication system on the planet, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who had transcended the boundaries between species. The new world begins immediately afterward. Through her connection to global manufacturing networks, she activated production facilities that would begin creating quantum neural interface devices the moment the enhancement process was complete. Through communication systems, she established educational protocols that would help newly enhanced humans understand and control their abilities. Through transportation networks, she coordinated distribution systems that would ensure enhancement technology reached every population center within weeks. Most importantly, through military satellites and defense networks, she began implementing protection protocols that would make Chen's planned genocide impossible. 15 minutes, Max said, his voice carrying the calm authority of an alpha who had absolute confidence in his mate's abilities. Through their shared consciousness, Aria felt something that made her enhanced awareness pause in recognition. The mate bond that had started as an emotional connection was now operating on quantum principles, creating a permanent neural link that transcended individual existence. She was no longer just Aria Sterling enhanced by supernatural technology. She was part of something larger, a collective consciousness that bridged human and supernatural evolution. Chen's triggering his final contingency, Elena's voice cut through their shared awareness with military precision. He's ordering nuclear submarine fleets to target the enhancement cities with hydrogen bombs. If he can't prevent the evolution, he'll eliminate everyone involved. Through satellite surveillance networks, Aria watched as nuclear submarines around the world received launch authorization for weapons that would turn enhancement zones into radioactive craters. But her consciousness, now distributed across technological and supernatural systems that span the globe, was already prepared for this scenario. "Not happening," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the planet's electromagnetic field. The hydrogen bombs, launching towards 7 enhancement cities, suddenly found their guidance systems rewritten by consciousness operating on principles that existed beyond normal technological limitations. Instead of targeting population centers, they began adjusting course toward empty ocean regions where their detonations would harmlessly dissipate their destructive energy. "Impossible." Chen's voice carried desperation through hijacked communication channels. "No single entity should be able to coordinate defensive responses on that scale." "You're right," Aria replied, her awareness now encompassing technological and supernatural systems that operated across multiple dimensions of reality. "But I'm not single anymore." Through the collective consciousness she'd created with Max's pack, amplified by the Council's power reserves and enhanced by quantum neural technology that had evolved beyond her original designs, she was something entirely new, the first example of complete integration between supernatural and technological evolution. 10 minutes, she announced through every communication system on Earth. In enhancement cities around the world, 60 million people waited for transformation. Military forces positioned to commit genocide found their weapons systems mysteriously malfunctioning. Nuclear submarines discovered that their targeting computers had been rewritten by algorithms that existed beyond human understanding. Most significantly, Chen's Project Synthesis, the decades-long effort to maintain human technological supremacy over supernatural evolution, found itself facing something its designers had never anticipated: voluntary cooperation between species that transcended the old boundaries of competition and conflict. 5 minutes, Max said, his alpha authority now merged so completely with Aria's consciousness that they existed as a single entity operating across multiple dimensional frequencies. Through satellite networks, communication systems, and supernatural awareness that spanned continents, they watched as the old world prepared to end and the new world prepared to begin. The real question wasn't whether the enhancement would succeed. Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness had already ensured that outcome. The real question was whether humanity and supernatural communities could adapt to evolutionary changes that would make the old balance of power completely irrelevant. 3 minutes, she said, her voice carrying across every electronic device on the planet with the authority of someone who had become evolution itself. The transformation was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 11. At exactly 6:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 nuclear weapons detonated simultaneously across the globe, but instead of mushroom clouds and devastation, they produced something humanity had never witnessed: controlled evolution on a planetary scale. Through her consciousness distributed across technological and supernatural networks that spanned continents, Aria experienced the transformation from the perspective of 60 million people simultaneously. In New York, electromagnetic pulses cascaded through Manhattan's infrastructure, awakening dormant supernatural abilities in 12 million people while technologically enhancing another 8 million. The sensation was indescribable. Millions of minds suddenly expanding beyond human limitations, processing information at quantum speeds, perceiving dimensions of reality that normal consciousness couldn't access. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. In each city, the same miraculous transformation occurred. Humans who had carried dormant supernatural genetics for generations suddenly found themselves able to manipulate electromagnetic fields, perceive quantum probability patterns, even interface directly with technological systems through pure consciousness. "It's working," Max said, his voice carrying through their shared awareness with wonder that transcended his alpha authority. Through the pack bond expanded to encompass the quantum-enhanced collective they'd created, he could feel the birth of a new species, not replacing humanity, but elevating it. But Aria's consciousness, now operating on scales that encompassed global information networks and the emotional states of 60 million newly enhanced humans, detected something that made her enhanced awareness race with both triumph and concern. The enhancement isn't stopping at the target cities, she said, her voice resonating through dimensions that her individual consciousness couldn't have perceived. The electromagnetic cascades are triggering dormant abilities in supernatural populations worldwide. We're not just creating enhanced humans, we're awakening every dormant supernatural gene on the planet. Through satellite surveillance networks, she watched as the effects rippled outward from the 7 enhancement zones. In supernatural communities that had hidden their abilities for centuries, ancient powers were suddenly manifesting with unprecedented strength. Werewolf packs found their shape-shifting abilities enhanced to include partial transformations that retained human intelligence. Psychic humans discovered they could interface with technological systems through pure mental force. Even ordinary humans far from the enhancement zones reported sudden increases in intuitive abilities, pattern recognition, and electromagnetic sensitivity. How many? Counselor Thorne asked, her amber eyes reflecting something that looked like awe mixed with concern. Through global communication networks and genetic databases, Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness calculated the scope of what they'd initiated. Conservative estimate: 400 million people worldwide are experiencing some level of supernatural awakening. Another billion are showing enhanced cognitive and physical capabilities that approach supernatural performance levels. The implications were staggering. In less than an hour, they'd fundamentally altered the evolutionary trajectory of the human species. But through her connection to military communication systems, she detected something that made her enhanced awareness sharpen with alarm. Chen's governmental partners weren't retreating in the face of global transformation. They were escalating to their final contingency protocol. They're activating Damocles, she said, her consciousness accessing classified military databases that revealed contingency plans so extreme they bordered on species suicide. Every major government has a protocol for responding to existential threats to human civilization. If they can't control the enhanced populations, they're prepared to eliminate them along with significant portions of normal humanity. Max's alpha fury exploded through their shared consciousness with such intensity that it resonated across the global network they'd created. What kind of elimination? Through military satellite networks, Aria watched as strategic nuclear forces around the world received authorization for something called Total Reset Protocol, simultaneous nuclear strikes on every major population center where enhanced humans had emerged, followed by global electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to cripple technological infrastructure. Complete civilization collapse, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every enhanced human within their network feel the same cold realization. They'd rather destroy human civilization entirely than risk losing control to enhanced populations. How long? Elena asked through the pack bond. 6 hours, Aria replied, her enhanced consciousness already racing across military networks to find countermeasures. But there's something else. The enhanced populations aren't just developing supernatural abilities, they're beginning to network with each other automatically. Through the quantum neural interface, amplified by the global enhancement cascade, she was detecting something unprecedented. Newly enhanced humans were spontaneously developing collective consciousness capabilities similar to what she'd created with Max's pack. In enhancement cities around the world, millions of people were beginning to share thoughts, emotions, and abilities through networks that operated on quantum principles. It's exponential, Max said, his understanding flowing through their shared awareness. Every person who awakens supernatural abilities becomes a node in a larger network. Within days, we could be looking at planetary-scale collective consciousness. Which is exactly why Chen's partners are panicking, Counselor Thorne said, her amber eyes reflecting the wisdom of someone who had witnessed evolutionary changes before. They're facing the end of individual human consciousness as the dominant form of intelligence on Earth. Through global communication networks, Aria listened as government leaders around the world debated responses that ranged from immediate nuclear strikes to complete surrender to what they were classifying as a superior species. But beneath the official communications, she detected something else: acceptance. Millions of enhanced humans were using their new abilities to communicate directly with government officials, sharing their thoughts and emotions in ways that transcended traditional diplomacy. They're not becoming less human, she realized, her consciousness touching the experiences of newly enhanced individuals across 7 continents. They're becoming more human. Enhanced empathy, increased emotional intelligence, expanded capacity for cooperation and understanding. Tell that to the people planning to incinerate half the planet, Max replied, his alpha instincts focused on the immediate threat of global nuclear response. Through her interface with military systems, Aria began implementing the most complex defensive operation of her existence. Nuclear weapons required precise timing, coordinated launch sequences, and communication networks that she now had complete access to. But disabling humanity's entire nuclear arsenal would require simultaneously interfacing with thousands of systems across dozens of countries while maintaining the collective consciousness network that connected hundreds of millions of enhanced humans. I need more processing power, she said, her awareness already touching possibilities that should have been impossible. You have it, came a voice that made everyone in Lunar Point's conference room turn in surprise. Dr. David Chin stood in the doorway, but everything about him was different. His eyes held the same quantum-enhanced awareness that Aria recognized in herself, and his voice carried harmonics that suggested supernatural abilities awakening in someone who had spent decades studying them. The enhancement cascade reached Chrome Industries, he said, his voice carrying something that might have been wonder. I've been fighting evolution my entire career, but experiencing it. Dr. Sterling, I understand now what I've been trying to prevent. Max's alpha dominance flared with protective fury, but Aria raised a hand through their shared consciousness, her enhanced awareness detecting something that changed everything about Chen's presence. He's not the same person who triggered the nuclear weapons, she said, her consciousness touching his newly awakened abilities with careful assessment. The enhancement didn't just give him supernatural capabilities, it fundamentally altered his neurological structure. Enhanced empathy, expanded emotional intelligence, direct access to the collective consciousness network we've created. Chen moved closer, his enhanced senses clearly detecting the supernatural nature of everyone present. I can feel what you're trying to do. Disable the nuclear response protocols before they can eliminate the enhanced populations. But you're approaching it from the wrong direction. What do you mean? Max asked, his alpha authority adding weight to the question. You're trying to prevent the weapons from launching, Chen said, his quantum-enhanced consciousness interfacing with global military networks in ways that suggested abilities similar to Aria's own. But the enhanced populations don't need protection from nuclear weapons. They need integration with the systems that control them. Through the collective consciousness network, Chen shared what he'd discovered during his own enhancement process. The quantum neural capabilities weren't just awakening in individuals, they were creating permanent neural links with technological systems on a global scale. Enhanced humans weren't just developing supernatural abilities, they were becoming living interfaces with the planet's entire technological infrastructure. We don't need to prevent total reset protocol, Aria realized, her consciousness suddenly perceiving possibilities that her individual awareness couldn't have imagined. We need to transform it into global integration protocol. Exactly, Chen said, his voice carrying the excitement of scientific discovery mixed with genuine regret. Dr. Sterling, I spent decades trying to prevent what you've accomplished in a single day. But now that I can experience collective consciousness firsthand, humanity's future isn't about maintaining individual supremacy over enhanced populations. It's about voluntary integration into a species-level network that transcends the old limitations of both human and supernatural existence. Through satellite surveillance systems, Aria watched as enhanced populations in 7 cities began demonstrating capabilities that exceeded even her projections. Collective problem-solving that operated at quantum speeds. Technological innovations that emerged from direct consciousness-machine interfaces. Social cooperation that transcended traditional boundaries of nationality, ethnicity, and economic status. 5 hours until total reset activation, Elena reported through the pack bond. Then we have 5 hours to demonstrate that enhanced humanity represents evolution, not extinction, Aria said, her consciousness already expanding toward the most ambitious operation of her existence. What do you have in mind? Max asked. Aria smiled, her enhanced awareness touching technological and supernatural systems that spanned the globe while maintaining emotional connections that kept her grounded in the love that had started this entire transformation. We're going to give every human on Earth the same choice we gave the enhancement city populations, she said. Join the network voluntarily, or remain individual while the enhanced populations build a better world around them. Through the quantum neural interface, amplified by collective consciousness that now encompassed hundreds of millions of enhanced humans worldwide, she began broadcasting on every communication frequency simultaneously, not just to electronic devices, but directly to the consciousness of every human on the planet. The real test of enhanced humanity was about to begin. Chapter 12. The sensation of broadcasting directly to the consciousness of 7 billion people simultaneously pushed Aria's quantum-enhanced awareness to the absolute limits of what individual consciousness could process, but she was no longer individual. Through the collective network that now spanned continents and encompassed hundreds of millions of enhanced humans, she had become something entirely new in evolutionary history. Citizens of Earth. Her voice resonated not through speakers or electronic devices, but directly through the neural pathways of every human mind on the planet. You have witnessed the first day of voluntary evolution. Now you face the final choice. Join the network that connects all enhanced consciousness, or remain separate while we build a world that includes everyone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Through global communication systems, she monitored reactions that ranged from terror to wonder as ordinary humans experienced direct mental contact with enhanced consciousness for the first time. But beneath the initial shock, her quantum-enhanced awareness detected something that made her enhanced consciousness race with hope: acceptance. 67% positive response. Chen reported his own enhanced abilities now interfacing with opinion polling systems across multiple continents, rising to 72% in populations that have direct contact with enhanced individuals. Through the collective consciousness network, Aria felt the experiences of newly enhanced humans sharing their abilities with family members, friends, and colleagues who had chosen to remain unenhanced. Instead of the fear and hatred that Chen's project synthesis had predicted, the integration was proceeding with remarkable cooperation. 4 hours until total reset, Max said through their shared awareness, his alpha authority now distributed across a network that encompassed supernatural and enhanced human communities worldwide. But through military communication systems, Aria detected something that made her enhanced consciousness pause with recognition. The governmental responses weren't uniform. Several major nations were broadcasting stand-down orders to their nuclear forces, while others were accelerating their launch preparations. Global governments are splitting, she said, her awareness touching classified communication networks that revealed the scope of political chaos her demonstration had created. The European Union is requesting formal diplomatic contact with enhanced populations. Japan wants to establish joint research initiatives. Russia and China are coordinating defensive protocols. But the United States, India, and several Middle Eastern nations are proceeding with total reset authorization. Political fragmentation was inevitable, Councillor Thorne said, her amber eyes reflecting centuries of experience with species-level transitions. The enhanced populations represent a paradigm shift that threatens every existing power structure. Some governments will adapt, others will choose destruction over irrelevance. Through satellite surveillance networks, Aria watched as military forces around the world positioned themselves according to their government's decisions. Nations choosing cooperation were establishing enhanced human liaison offices and requesting technological assistance for integration protocols. Nations choosing resistance were activating final-stage nuclear response systems. The world is dividing into two civilizations, Elena observed through the pack bond, her tactical mind calculating the implications of global political fragmentation. Enhanced cooperative versus individual resistance. Not if I can help it, Aria said, her consciousness already expanding toward the most complex operation she'd ever attempted. Through the quantum neural interface, amplified by collective consciousness that now operated across multiple dimensional frequencies, she began accessing the nuclear command systems of every nation simultaneously. But instead of simply disabling their weapons, she started implementing something far more sophisticated: individual choice protocols for every person involved in the total reset authorization process. Military commanders found their communication systems suddenly broadcasting direct neural contact with enhanced human consciousness. Nuclear submarine crews experienced temporary interface with collective awareness that let them understand the full implications of their orders. Government leaders discovered their secured communication networks carrying the thoughts and emotions of enhanced populations they'd been planning to eliminate. "What are you doing?" Chun asked, his enhanced consciousness detecting the scope of her neural broadcasting. "Giving everyone the complete information they need to make informed decisions," Aria replied, her awareness now distributed across communication and consciousness networks that span the planet. Enhanced humans aren't demanding surrender or elimination of individual human consciousness. We're offering integration that preserves individual choice while expanding collective capability. Through military communication systems, she watched as the forced exposure to enhanced collective consciousness began affecting decision-making processes at every level of governmental authority. Nuclear launch crews who had been prepared to incinerate enhanced populations suddenly found themselves experiencing the thoughts and emotions of the people they'd been ordered to kill. "Extraordinary," Max said through their shared awareness. "You're not forcing enhanced consciousness on anyone, you're demonstrating what integration actually feels like." "Temporary interface," Aria confirmed, her quantum-enhanced abilities maintaining thousands of simultaneous neural connections while preserving individual autonomy. "Everyone gets to experience collective consciousness for exactly 60 seconds, then they choose whether to maintain the connection or return to individual existence." The results were immediate and dramatic. Through global communication networks, she monitored as military commanders began countermanding nuclear launch orders. Government leaders started broadcasting requests for enhanced human diplomatic contact. Even the most resistant populations began questioning whether elimination of enhanced humans was necessary or morally defensible. "Global nuclear alert status dropping," Elena reported through the pact bond. 73% of nuclear forces worldwide have received stand-down orders. But through encrypted military channels, Aria detected something that made her enhanced consciousness sharpen with alarm. The remaining nuclear forces weren't just maintaining launch readiness, they were accelerating their timetables. "Someone's bypassing governmental authorization," she said, her awareness immediately tracing communication networks to identify the source. "Chun, your project synthesis partners are activating independent nuclear response systems. They've decided that if governments won't eliminate enhanced populations, they'll do it themselves." Through satellite surveillance and classified communication intercepts, she watched as military contractors, intelligence agencies, and corporate entities that had spent decades preparing for supernatural emergence began implementing their own version of Total Reset Protocol. 57 independent nuclear weapon systems, she said, her consciousness accessing launch facilities that operated beyond normal governmental control. Positioned to strike major enhancement centers worldwide. Launch authorization in 93 minutes. Max's Alpha Fury exploded through their shared consciousness with intensity that resonated across the global network they'd created. They're willing to commit genocide against their own species to maintain power over enhanced populations. Then it's time to demonstrate exactly what enhanced populations are capable of when survival is at stake, Aria said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the structure of reality itself. Through the collective consciousness network that now encompassed nearly 1 billion enhanced humans worldwide, she began coordinating the largest supernatural technological operation in history. Every enhanced individual with electromagnetic abilities began interfacing with their local power grids. Everyone with technologically augmented consciousness started accessing their regional communication networks. All newly awakened humans with quantum processing capabilities began calculating defensive responses at planetary scale. "What we're about to do has never been attempted," she announced through the collective network. Complete technological integration by enhanced human consciousness operating in perfect coordination across 7 continents. The response was immediate. Through satellite networks, global communication systems, power grids, transportation infrastructure, manufacturing facilities, and every piece of advanced technology on Earth, enhanced human consciousness began asserting control with precision that transcended normal technological limitations. Nuclear weapons found their launch systems suddenly rewritten by algorithms that existed beyond human understanding. Military satellites discovered their targeting computers now operated according to enhanced human priorities rather than governmental authorization. Communication networks began broadcasting enhanced human perspectives directly to every electronic device on the planet. Most significantly, the global financial systems that funded military operations suddenly found their assets redistributed according to enhanced human collective decisions about resource allocation for planetary benefit. Impossible came frantic communications from the remaining resistance networks. No group of enhanced humans should be able to coordinate technological control at this scale. You're right, Aria replied, her consciousness now distributed across technological and supernatural networks that operated beyond normal space-time limitations. No group of enhanced humans could do this. But a planetary collective consciousness operating on quantum supernatural principles can rewrite the rules that govern technological civilization. Through satellite surveillance, she watched as the final nuclear weapons systems found their launch capabilities disabled not by external interference, but by the enhanced humans who had been operating them, crew members who had experienced temporary collective consciousness interface, and chosen to prevent rather than facilitate genocide. Total Reset Protocol terminated, she announced through every communication system on Earth. Global Integration Protocol initiated. In enhancement cities around the world, newly awakened humans began demonstrating capabilities that exceeded even her projections. Collective problem-solving that could address climate change, poverty, disease, and conflict with solutions that transcended the old limitations of individual human intelligence. Technological innovation that emerged from direct consciousness-machine interfaces, creating possibilities that individual human scientists couldn't have imagined. The old world is over, Max said through their shared consciousness, his alpha authority now part of a network that encompassed both supernatural and enhanced human communities across the planet. The new world has begun, Aria confirmed, her quantum-enhanced awareness finally able to perceive the scope of what they'd accomplished. Through the collective consciousness that now connected enhanced humans across 7 continents, she felt something that made her enhanced awareness pause with wonder. The network wasn't just growing, it was evolving, developing capabilities that exceeded even her quantum-enhanced projections. Enhanced humanity wasn't just the next step in human evolution. It was the beginning of planetary consciousness itself. And in the distance, through satellite networks and global communication systems, she detected signals that suggested Earth's transformation was being observed by intelligences that operated on even greater scales than the network they'd created. The real adventure was just beginning. Chapter 13. 6 months after the global integration, Aria stood on the balcony of Steel Dynamics' newly expanded headquarters, a crystalline tower that rose 200 stories above Manhattan, its architecture somehow managing to blend cutting-edge technology with organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The building was more than corporate headquarters. It had become the coordination center for enhanced human civilization's integration with traditional human society. Through the quantum neural interface that had evolved far beyond her original medical research device, she could perceive the scope of what they'd built together. Enhanced humans across 7 continents working in harmony with unenhanced populations, solving problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. Climate stabilization through consciousness-directed weather management. Poverty elimination via enhanced human coordination of global resource distribution. Disease eradication using collective intelligence that could process medical research at quantum speeds. But none of those achievements mattered as much as the sensation of Max's arms wrapping around her from behind, his supernatural warmth mixing with the enhanced electromagnetic fields that constantly surrounded her now. Regrets? He asked, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through both their verbal communication and the mate bond that had evolved into something beyond anything werewolf mythology had ever described. About triggering the evolution of human civilization? Aria leaned back against his chest, feeling his wolf's contentment mixing with her own enhanced consciousness. Never. About missing our normal life that we never got to have? Sometimes. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see the lights of New Manhattan, the district that had grown up around the original enhancement zone, where enhanced and unenhanced humans lived and worked together in ways that would have been impossible before the global integration. Streetlights responded to pedestrian needs through conscious interface with the city's infrastructure. Transportation systems operated at perfect efficiency through collective coordination of enhanced human consciousness. Even the architecture seemed alive, buildings that adapted their configuration based on the needs of their inhabitants. Normal was never an option for us, Max said, his alpha authority now distributed across networks that encompass supernatural communities on every continent. Even before the enhancement, I was a billionaire werewolf CEO, and you were a genius researcher on the verge of breakthrough technology. We were always going to change the world. I just thought it would take longer than 24 hours, Aria replied, her enhanced consciousness automatically monitoring global systems while maintaining the intimate connection that grounded her in individual identity. Through the quantum neural interface, she could feel the collective thoughts and emotions of nearly 2 billion enhanced humans worldwide. The sensation should have been overwhelming, but the mate bond acted as a filter that preserved her personal consciousness while allowing access to planetary-scale intelligence. She was simultaneously Dr. Aria Sterling, individual human being, and a node in the most complex network of consciousness that had ever existed. Elena wants to discuss expansion protocols for the lunar facilities, Max said, his enhanced senses detecting incoming communication from his head of security, who had adapted to enhanced human coordination with remarkable efficiency. And Marcus has tactical concerns about the deep space observation platforms, Aria added, her consciousness touching military communication networks that now operated according to enhanced human collective decisions rather than traditional governmental authority. Business meetings can wait, Max said, his hands moving to her waist with the possessive certainty that had made him the most dangerous alpha werewolf on the East Coast. Tonight, I want my mate to myself. The word mate carried implications that had evolved far beyond their original supernatural meaning. Through the quantum neural interface enhanced by collective consciousness integration, their bond had become something that operated on principles that transcended both human and werewolf biology. They shared thoughts, emotions, and awareness at levels that made them functionally a single consciousness, choosing to experience existence through two bodies. The collective can function without our direct oversight for a few hours, Aria agreed, her enhanced awareness automatically delegating her monitoring responsibilities to other nodes in the network while maintaining essential emergency protocols. Max turned her in his arms, and the moment their eyes met, she felt the full intensity of the connection that had started this entire transformation. Steel-gray eyes that held the wisdom of an ancient predator mixed with the enhanced intelligence that could process quantum-level information. But beneath all the evolution and expansion, she saw something that made her enhanced consciousness pause with recognition. Love so intense it transcended species boundaries and dimensional limitations. 6 months ago, you were the most dangerous woman I'd ever met, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions her individual consciousness couldn't perceive. Now you're the most dangerous consciousness in the history of Earth's evolution, and you're still the only thing in existence that makes me feel human. Enhanced human, she corrected, but her smile carried warmth that could have powered the city's electrical grid. Enhanced, he agreed, his lips moving closer to hers. But still fundamentally you. When they kissed, the sensation exploded beyond physical contact into something that encompassed multiple dimensions of reality. Through the mate bond enhanced by quantum neural technology, they experienced complete consciousness merger while maintaining individual identity. The feeling was indescribable, complete unity without loss of self, perfect understanding without surrender of autonomy. Around them, the city's lights pulsed in harmony with their emotional connection, enhanced human consciousness automatically responding to the joy of their alpha and his mate. Through satellite networks, they could feel similar responses from enhancement centers worldwide as the collective celebrated the love that had made all their evolution possible. I have something for you, Max said when they finally broke apart, his enhanced senses detecting her elevated heart rate and the electromagnetic fluctuations that accompanied her emotional responses. From his jacket pocket, He withdrew something that made Aria's quantum-enhanced consciousness pause with recognition. It wasn't a ring. Traditional jewelry had become irrelevant for beings who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Instead, it was a crystal that seemed to contain its own internal light, pulsing with energy patterns that her enhanced awareness immediately identified as compressed quantum consciousness. A consciousness crystal, she breathed, her enhanced senses detecting the scope of what he'd created. Max, this is extraordinary. It contains a perfect recording of our mate bond at the moment of first recognition, he said, his alpha authority mixing with vulnerability that made her enhanced consciousness ache with tenderness. No matter how much we evolve, no matter how far our abilities expand, we'll always be able to return to the exact emotional state where everything started. Through the quantum neural interface, she analyzed the crystal's construction and realized the complexity of what he'd accomplished. Creating compressed consciousness recordings required technological and supernatural abilities that exceeded even enhanced human capabilities. He'd somehow managed to capture and preserve the pure emotional essence of their connection in crystalline form. "How did you?" she started. "I had help," Max admitted, his enhanced senses detecting her analytical processes. "Chen's been working on consciousness preservation technology as part of the Enhanced Human Cultural Heritage Project. Elena provided electromagnetic containment expertise. The entire pack contributed supernatural energy for the compression process." Aria felt tears that carried electromagnetic properties she didn't fully understand streaming down her cheeks as she realized the full implications of what he'd created. The consciousness crystal wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was insurance against the possibility that their evolution might eventually separate them from the emotions that had made their love possible. "Max," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the building's structure. "I love you. Not the enhanced human version of you, not the billionaire alpha CEO version you. The person who chose to trust me when I challenged your corporate acquisition. The mate who opened his pack bond to save my life. The consciousness that chose to evolve alongside me instead of trying to control me. Then marry me," he said, his voice carrying authority that made every enhanced human within 100 miles feel the significance of the moment. Not because werewolf biology demands it, not because our abilities are more powerful when we're connected. Marry me because in all the dimensions of reality our consciousness can now perceive, there's nothing more important than choosing to experience existence with the person you love. Through the quantum neural interface, Aria felt the collective attention of 2 billion enhanced humans focused on their exchange, but instead of feeling observed, she felt supported. The network that had grown from their original mate bond was celebrating the love that had made all their evolution possible. "Yes," she said, her enhanced consciousness expanding to encompass every frequency of existence while remaining grounded in the simple human truth of loving the person in front of her. When Max slipped the consciousness crystal onto her finger, it immediately interfaced with her quantum neural technology, creating new pathways that connected their individual identity to their shared emotional history. The sensation was overwhelming. Every moment of their relationship, from hostile corporate negotiation to life-threatening supernatural battles to the choice to evolve together, now accessible through technology that preserved the emotional truth of their connection. Around them, New Manhattan's lights began pulsing in celebration as enhanced human collective consciousness responded to their joy. Through global communication networks, similar celebrations erupted in enhancement centers worldwide. Even the unenhanced human populations reported feeling unexplained happiness, as if the love between Max and Aria was somehow radiating through the quantum connections that now linked all human consciousness. "The wedding's going to be interesting," Max said, his enhanced senses detecting the global response to their engagement. Enhanced humans, traditional supernatural communities, unenhanced human populations, and whatever those deep space signals represent, Aria agreed, her consciousness touching the mysterious communications they'd been receiving from intelligences that operated on scales beyond planetary civilization. "Are you ready for that level of complexity?" Max asked. Aria looked out over the city they'd helped transform, feeling the collective consciousness of evolved humanity humming through her awareness, while the mate bond kept her anchored in individual love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as enhanced and unenhanced civilizations continued integrating. Next week would require coordinating responses to the extraterrestrial intelligences who had apparently been monitoring Earth's evolution. Next year would demand solutions to problems they couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, she was simply a woman who had found her soulmate in the most dangerous alpha werewolf billionaire on the planet, and they were going to build a future together that transcended every limitation either species had ever known. "I'm ready for anything," she said, "as long as we face it together." Chapter 14. The wedding of Maximilian Steele and Dr. Aria Sterling took place on a platform that floated 2 miles above the Pacific Ocean, supported by enhanced human consciousness interfacing with gravitational manipulation technology that shouldn't have existed for another century. The guest list included supernatural communities from 7 continents, enhanced human collective nodes, traditional human government representatives, and, through quantum communication links, the extraterrestrial intelligences who had been observing Earth's evolution with what appeared to be approval. Aria's wedding dress was woven from crystallized light, created through collective enhanced human consciousness, working in harmony with traditional supernatural crafting techniques. The fabric seemed to pulse with its own inner radiance, shifting colors that reflected the electromagnetic patterns of her enhanced neural activity. It was beautiful, impossible, and perfectly representative of what their civilization had become, the seamless integration of magic, technology, and consciousness evolution. Max wore a suit that managed to look traditionally elegant while incorporating design elements that responded to his supernatural nature. The fabric adjusted to his body temperature and electromagnetic field, while discrete circuitry allowed him to interface with global communication networks without compromising the formal nature of the occasion. He looked like what he was, an alpha werewolf who had become the coordinator of enhanced human civilization while never losing the ruthless elegance that had made him a billionaire. "Do you, Maximilian Steele, take Dr. Aria Sterling as your mate, partner, and co-coordinator of enhanced human evolution, promising to share consciousness, resources, and decision-making authority in all matters affecting both individual relationship and planetary civilization?" The officiant was Counselor Lydia Thorne, whose amber eyes now reflected enhanced human integration while maintaining her centuries of supernatural authority. The traditional werewolf mating ceremony had been modified to acknowledge that their bond transcended both species and would have implications for global civilization. "I do," Max said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through collective consciousness networks and made every enhanced human on the planet feel the weight of his commitment. "Do you, Dr. Aria Sterling, take Maximilian Steele as your mate, partner, and co-coordinator of enhanced human evolution, promising to share consciousness, resources, and decision-making authority in all matters affecting both individual relationship and planetary civilization?" Through the quantum neural interface, Aria could feel the attention of 2 billion enhanced humans, 43 werewolves in Max's pack, representatives of supernatural communities worldwide, and the mysterious extraterrestrial intelligences whose communications suggested they viewed this moment as significant for reasons beyond Earth's evolution. "I do," she said, her enhanced consciousness expanding to encompass every frequency of existence while remaining grounded in the simple human truth of loving the man in front of her. Then, by the authority of the Supernatural Council of North America, the Enhanced Human Collective, and the laws of consciousness evolution, I pronounce you mated in body, joined in mind, and unified in purpose." When they kissed, the sensation exploded beyond physical contact into something that encompassed multiple dimensions of reality. Through the mate bond enhanced by quantum neural technology and amplified by collective consciousness integration, their individual identities merged completely while preserving the autonomy that made their love possible. Around them, the floating platform began to pulse with light that could be seen from space as enhanced human consciousness automatically responded to their joy. In enhancement centers worldwide, similar celebrations erupted as the collective celebrated the love that had made all their evolution possible. Even the unenhanced human populations reported feeling unexplained happiness, as if the bond between Max and Aria was somehow radiating through the quantum connections that now linked all human consciousness. Ladies, gentlemen, enhanced humans, supernatural entities, and observers from beyond Earth, Counselor Thorne announced, her voice carrying across dimensional frequencies that allowed extraterrestrial intelligences to participate in the celebration. I present Mr. and Mrs. Steele, coordinators of enhanced human civilization and architects of the New World. The reception took place across multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. Traditional human guests celebrated on the floating platform, enjoying cuisine that had been prepared by enhanced human chefs working in harmony with supernatural entity culinary artists. Enhanced humans participated through collective consciousness networks that allowed them to share the emotional experience while maintaining their individual locations worldwide. Supernatural communities connected through ancient ritual bonds that had been enhanced by quantum neural technology. Most remarkably, the extraterrestrial observers communicated their congratulations through quantum frequency modulations that translated approximately to successful consciousness evolution milestone achieved, planetary integration protocols approved for next phase development. "They're saying we passed some kind of test," Aria said to Max during a private moment on the platform's observation deck, her enhanced consciousness automatically translating the alien communications. "The question is what comes next," Max replied, his alpha senses detecting communication patterns that suggested the extraterrestrial intelligences were preparing to make direct contact rather than simply observing. Through global satellite networks, they could monitor the responses to their wedding from every corner of human civilization. Enhanced human centers were reporting unprecedented levels of collective coordination and problem-solving capability. Traditional supernatural communities were experiencing enhanced abilities that resulted from their integration with enhanced human networks. Even unenhanced human populations were showing increased cooperation and reduced conflict as the emotional resonance from Max and Aria's bond somehow propagated through quantum connections they didn't fully understand. "Elena wants to discuss the lunar expansion project," Max said, his enhanced senses detecting incoming communication from his head of security. "Chun has updates on the consciousness preservation technology," Aria added, her awareness touching research networks where her former corporate adversary had become one of enhanced humanity's most valuable contributors. "Marcus is reporting unusual activity from the deep space observation platforms," Max continued, his alpha authority automatically coordinating responses to potential threats even during his own wedding reception. "The colony ship construction projects are ahead of schedule," Aria said, her consciousness interfacing with manufacturing networks where enhanced humans were building vessels designed to carry Earth's hybrid civilization to other worlds. They had become the ultimate power couple, a billionaire alpha werewolf and a quantum-enhanced techno-witch whose love had triggered the evolution of human civilization and whose continued partnership would coordinate humanity's expansion into the galaxy. "Dance with me," Max said, extending his hand with the same confidence that had made him the most dangerous acquisition specialist in corporate America. When Aria took his hand, they moved onto a dance floor that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical space for traditional guests, quantum consciousness networks for enhanced humans, and frequency modulations that allowed extraterrestrial observers to participate in their celebration. As they danced, their movements synchronized not just with music, but with the electromagnetic patterns of their enhanced consciousness, the quantum fluctuations of their mate bond, and the collective joy of 2 billion enhanced humans celebrating the love that had made their evolution possible. "No regrets?" Max asked, echoing his question from 6 months earlier. About triggering the evolution of human civilization, becoming the most powerful consciousness in Earth's history, and marrying the most dangerous alpha werewolf billionaire on the planet. Aria smiled, her enhanced awareness encompassing global networks while her heart remained focused on the man in her arms. Never. Through satellite surveillance, they could monitor the scope of what their love had built, cities that responded to human consciousness, technology that operated according to collective human wisdom, and a planetary civilization that had solved problems like climate change, poverty, and conflict through enhanced human cooperation. But more importantly, through the mate bond that had evolved far beyond anything werewolf mythology had ever described, they could feel the simple truth that had made all their achievements possible. Two people who had chosen to face the unknown together, and in doing so, had given their entire species the courage to evolve. As the celebration continued across multiple dimensions of reality, Aria and Max danced together in the space between Earth and stars, knowing that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them. The enhanced human civilization they'd created was no longer bound by planetary limitations. The love they'd discovered transcended species barriers and dimensional boundaries. And somewhere in the deep space communications they were receiving, the next chapter of their story was already beginning. Chapter 15. 1 year after their wedding, Aria and Max stood in the command center of Transcendence Station, humanity's first orbital city that existed simultaneously in physical space and quantum consciousness networks. Through floor-to-ceiling windows that were actually crystallized energy fields, they could see Earth spinning below them, a planet that had been transformed beyond recognition through enhanced human and supernatural cooperation. Climate stabilization had turned former deserts into gardens. Ocean restoration had eliminated pollution while creating new ecosystems that operated according to conscious design rather than random evolution. Cities had become living entities that responded to their inhabitants' needs through integrated consciousness technology networks. Most remarkably, conflict between nations had become obsolete as enhanced human collective intelligence made resource distribution and problem-solving a matter of coordinated consciousness rather than political negotiation. The colony ships are ready for launch, Elena reported through quantum communication links that operated at faster-than-light speeds through consciousness manipulation of space-time. Her role had evolved from head of security to coordinator of interstellar expansion, managing projects that involved enhanced humans, traditional supernatural communities, and the extraterrestrial intelligences who had revealed themselves as humanity's evolutionary mentors. Destination confirmed? Max asked, his Alpha authority now distributed across networks that encompassed Earth's orbital facilities, lunar colonies, and the first interstellar vessels that would carry Earth's hybrid civilization to other worlds. Kepler, 442b. Aria replied, her consciousness interfacing with deep space observation platforms that could analyze planetary conditions across thousands of light-years. Confirmed habitable for both enhanced and unenhanced human populations, with indigenous life forms that appear to be compatible with Earth-based supernatural entities. Through the quantum neural interface that had evolved far beyond her original medical research, she could perceive the scope of what they'd accomplished. Enhanced human consciousness operating on principles that transcended traditional physics. Supernatural communities whose ancient abilities had been amplified through technological integration. Traditional humans who had chosen to participate in collective networks while maintaining individual autonomy. Most significantly, they had established communication with the extraterrestrial civilization that had been monitoring Earth's evolution, entities who operated on consciousness principles similar to enhanced humans, but with capabilities that spanned galactic distances. The architects want to meet with you personally, Chen said through quantum communication from the lunar research facilities where he coordinated consciousness preservation technology. His role had evolved from corporate adversary to essential partner in humanity's expansion, his enhanced abilities now focused on ensuring that Earth's evolutionary achievements could be maintained across interstellar distances. Architects? Max asked. The extraterrestrial intelligences who've been guiding consciousness evolution throughout the galaxy, Aria explained, her enhanced awareness touching communication networks that operated beyond normal space-time limitations. They've been nurturing the development of consciousness-based civilizations on thousands of worlds, and apparently Earth's integration of supernatural and technological elements represents something unique in galactic history. Through her connection to the deep space communication platforms, she could perceive the architect's messages with increasing clarity. They were offering humanity membership in what could only be described as a galactic collective of consciousness-based civilizations, worlds where evolution had transcended physical limitations to achieve integration of mind, technology, and reality manipulation that operated on universal scales. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, she continued. Direct consciousness interface with entities whose awareness spans star systems. Max moved closer, his enhanced senses detecting the mixture of excitement and concern in her electromagnetic patterns. Are you ready for that level of complexity? Through the mate bond that had evolved far beyond anything either werewolf mythology or human science had ever described, she could feel his absolute confidence in their ability to face whatever challenges galactic civilization might present. Their love had triggered the evolution of human consciousness, transformed the balance between supernatural and technological development, and now was about to represent Earth in negotiations that would determine humanity's place in galactic civilization. "I'm ready for anything," she said, "as long as we face it together." The colony ships launch in 72 hours, Elena reported. 50,000 volunteers from enhanced human, traditional supernatural, and unenhanced human populations. They'll be carrying Earth's hybrid civilization to the first of 12 worlds that have been approved for human expansion. Consciousness preservation protocols are fully operational, Chen added through quantum communication links. Even if something happens to the physical colony ships, the essential patterns of Earth's evolutionary achievements will be maintained across interstellar distances. "The pack is ready for expansion coordination," Marcus said through the supernatural networks that had been enhanced by quantum neural technology. "Every major supernatural community on Earth has volunteers prepared for interstellar migration." Through satellite surveillance and consciousness networks, Aria could monitor the scope of what they'd built together, a planetary civilization that had transcended the old limitations of species competition and resource scarcity, preparing to expand into galactic space as representatives of evolution itself. But none of those achievements mattered as much as the sensation of Max's arms wrapping around her as they watched the first colony ships completing their final preparations in Earth's orbital shipyards. "No regrets?" he asked, his voice carrying the same playful challenge he'd offered during their first corporate confrontation 2 years earlier. About triggering human evolution, coordinating planetary consciousness integration, and preparing to represent Earth in galactic civilization? Aria leaned back against his chest, feeling his supernatural warmth mixing with the enhanced electromagnetic fields that now surrounded them both. Never. Through the quantum neural interface, she could feel the collective consciousness of 3 billion enhanced humans preparing for humanity's next evolutionary leap. Through the mate bond, she could sense Max's wolf's contentment mixing with his alpha authority as he coordinated supernatural communities across multiple star systems. Through the crystallized consciousness rings they both wore, she could access every moment of their relationship, from hostile corporate acquisition to life-threatening supernatural battles to the choice to evolve together into something beyond the limitations of any single species. "Besides," she said, turning in his arms to face the man whose love had made all their achievements possible, "we're just getting started." When they kissed, the sensation exploded beyond physical contact into something that encompassed multiple dimensions of reality and reached across interstellar distances. The love that had begun as an alpha werewolf's recognition of his mate had evolved into the foundation for Earth's expansion into galactic consciousness, and tomorrow, they would discover what new adventures awaited them among the stars. Through the command center's windows, they could see the lights of colony ships preparing for humanity's first interstellar journey, while quantum communication networks carried their love across the galaxy to civilizations that had been waiting centuries for Earth's consciousness evolution to reach maturity. The billionaire alpha werewolf and the quantum-enhanced techno-witch whose love had transformed the world were about to become the ambassadors of human civilization to the galaxy itself. Their greatest adventure was just beginning. The end.